Okay. And we're back. And we're here. Welcome. Welcome everybody to the God is Real stream. We're balling. We're going to be doing our classic old stuff. I hope you didn't all forget about me. It's possible. It's completely possible. I took that risk. I decided to frick off for 2 weeks. Okay, but I had some ideas.
I heard you're against slurs. Like, I've never been offended if someone calls me or something like that, because it's just like, why does it need to be such a big deal? Why do you need to be so worked up?
You said, well, it's not that big of a deal to use slurs. I don't think it's that big of a deal to stop using slurs.
100%. Both sides aren't that big of a deal, so it's like you can pick a side, and no one should, I can speak the way I want, and you can not speak the way you want.
I think
we're good. I heard you're against slurs. Like, I've never been offended if someone
Dean
calls
Withers
me
was
or
too
something.
stunned to speak. What kind of clip is this? What is my YouTube? What is my YouTube now? Horrendous.
I heard you're against slurs. Like, I've never been offended if someone.
And tiptoe through the window. Okay, this looked interesting. I'm kind of curious about it.
In today's episode, we're going to examine 3 new pieces of evidence for Jesus that are found outside the Bible. And so they provide even more evidence for the truth of the Christian faith. So let's start with the first piece of evidence that some have described as being bigger than the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Number 1, a 3rd century inscription saying Jesus is God. This one got traction in several 2024 news articles describing an inscription from the year 230 calling Jesus God. Here's one news story about it.
They carefully excavated the mosaic, hiding it securely in northern Israel, until flying it here for a first public appearance.
The table is dedicated to the God Jesus Christ. Now,
And we're in.
this phrase, God Jesus Christ, is in the 5th line of the inscription, and it is actually in a shortened form. So the letters that have the lines over them, it is actually a respectful way to write those words.
Dr. Duke believes these early writings are some of the first to show belief in the deity of Jesus, with this inscription from a Christian woman identified as a Keptis that reads God Jesus Christ. The Megiddo mosaic is one he hopes will open up a world of possibilities for future discoveries.
The Megiddo mosaic also shows images of loaves and fish, which refers to Jesus' miraculous feeding of the 5,000. Pope Benedict XVI said in a 2012 address that, quote, "The crowd was impressed by the miracle. It sees in Jesus the new Moses, worthy of power, and in the new manna, the future guaranteed. However, the people stopped at the..."
Be right back.
material element, which they had eaten. And Pope Leo XIV said, "Beyond being a marvel, the miracle is a sign that reminds us that God's gifts, even the smallest, grow whenever they are shared." And the rest of John 6 shows Jesus revealing the truth about the Eucharist, the bread which is his body that gives eternal life to the people that wanted more miraculously earthly bread. The early belief in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist as a sacrifice.
Let's get all my settings figured out here. Sound. Let's do these. Let's wear some headphones like a professional. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the stream. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm back. I'm better than ever. I'm rejuvenated, refreshed, ready to battle the forces of darkness. Using some Trent Horn. I heard about this inscription, so we're kind of looking at it. It's pretty interesting. A very, very early evidence for both the church and for Jesus, and actually for a certain church doctrine, which is that Jesus is God, right?
That takes away sin is also in the Megiddo Mosaic, because the text reads as follows: the God-loving Akeptus has offered the table to God Jesus Christ as a memorial. The word table can refer to altar, as can be seen in 1 Corinthians 10:21. You cannot partake of the table of the Lord and the table of demons. One study of the Megiddo Church points out that Christians used different words to refer to different kinds of altars. It says the following: in early Christianity, the altar was not called bomos, like the altars on which the pagans used to sacrifice, nor thesterion, as it was later named because of its identification with the altar of the temple, but trapeza, dining table, for here did the faithful celebrate the first rite, except for baptism, of the new religion, the breaking of bread and drinking of wine, as Jesus had instructed the apostles. So this early inscription shows that Jesus is God because you only offer sacrificial worship on an altar to God, but also that the early Christian liturgy involved offering the one sacrifice of Jesus Christ. As I noted in previous episodes, the description of offering the Eucharist in remembrance of Jesus in the Gospels uses the Greek word anamnesis, which is more properly translated memorial sacrifice. So these early Christians didn't just believe Jesus was God. They believed that they received the God-man in the Eucharistic sacrifice. That's why St. Cyprian, writing around the time of this inscription, said the following: for if Jesus Christ, our Lord and God, is himself the chief priest of God the Father, and has first offered himself a sacrifice to the Father, and has commanded this to be done in commemoration of himself, certainly that priest truly discharges the office of Christ, who imitates that which Christ did. And he then offers a true and full sacrifice in the church to God the Father, when he proceeds to offer it according to what he sees Christ himself to have offered. Before we check out the next two pieces of evidence, this is just a reminder that there's another source outside the Bible that can build up your faith, that being this channel. So if you want to help us...
What's up? Hello. I'm guessing, is that you, Vrindavan? Vrindavan? If that's you, come on. Feel free to come on up, brother. Appreciate you. How you doing today? Oh, let me change. Hold on, I gotta change my sound settings. Hold on. Tiptoe through the window. Okay, now we're good. What's up, my man? How you doing?
Nice. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Had a nice little vacation. Went to Maine, chilled out, did some sailing, some boating, went swimming. So we're
Are
good.
you in university?
What's that?
Are you in university right now?
I'm in Los Angeles. You know Los Angeles in California?
I know that. I'm asking that. Are you in college, like university type college? You are
Oh,
in university.
university. No, I'm out of university. I graduated, I guess, almost 2 years ago now. So
What did
uh,
you major in?
I majored in theology, actually, religions. And one of the religions I liked studying a lot was Hinduism. That was a very interesting course for me. I studied mostly the Eastern religions, Buddhism, Hinduism. Well, we call it Eastern. To you, you call it right here, huh? I'm not sure what you guys call it, but how about you? Are you in University, Vrindavan?
Yeah, I'm in university. I'm studying computer science right now.
Computer science. Very cool. Very cool. There must be a lot of people studying computer science in India.
Like insane. It's just insane. Like there are like more than 160 guys in my class.
160. Wow. That's insane. And do you have to study other stuff too? Like, do you have to study literature, or like, can you just focus on computer science?
It's just engineering, but we have to study like carpentering and shit like that, like
Oh,
welding,
really?
etc.
Oh, wow. Wow. Interesting.
But it's
Cool.
no, there is no. It's just engineering, but no other like literature, English,
Mm-hmm.
etc. Like none of the subjects.
Right. Do you have to learn a foreign language or no?
Like in some places we can, but it's not the case here.
Okay. Okay. That makes
Like
sense.
in some places they teach like Japanese and French, I guess. Like mostly
French.
Japanese because like there is a lot of immigration in Japanese from India.
And why Japanese? Why do they like Japanese so much?
Like I don't know, it's like something related to immigration, right?
Huh. Okay. Cool. Very cool. I mean, Japan's a cool place, and it's not that far from you, so I guess that'd be a good thing to study.
And like Japanese engineer come here like for projects and stuff, like civil engineering projects. Like engineers from Japan come here and they
Okay.
guide all the project out there.
Okay.
That's why like I think that's the reason like they teach Japanese.
Interesting. Interesting. Cool, man. Well, we're just we're just watching this video here about some new evidence for Jesus from outside the Bible, which is interesting always. And then I'm gonna break down a video that I watched that I think is wrong, that I have a problem with, and I'm gonna try to break it apart. So, welcome. Feel free to chime in if you have any thoughts or if you have anything you want to talk about in particular. Is there anything you want to talk about in particular while you're here, or
Nah.
no, just hanging out? Sweet. All right, let's do it.
Make content like this, please hit the subscribe button and support us for as little as $5 a month at TrentHornPodcast.com. All right, next up is number 2. Jesus' tomb is a garden tomb. John 19:41 says, "Now in the place where he was crucified there was a garden, and in the garden a new tomb where no one had ever been laid." In my previous episode on the 2 tombs of Jesus, linked below, I talk about the so-called Garden Tomb of Jerusalem. It's popular with Protestants because it lacks the Catholic and Orthodox elements that you find in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. But this Protestant tomb of Jesus also has no good historical claim to being Jesus' actual tomb. In contrast, the traditional site of Jesus' tomb within the Church of the Holy Sepulchre does have good evidence for its historicity. Now, you wouldn't think of a picturesque garden tomb in this spot, and it would be hard to know that since the Emperor Hadrian built temples to the pagan gods of Rome over the site of Calvary and Jesus' tomb, which ironically marked the site for future pilgrims to know its location. Recently, my friend Cameron Bertuzzi did an episode on his channel discussing new archaeological evidence that Jesus' tomb in the Holy Sepulchre was built over a garden, just as it's described in John's Gospel.
Archaeobotanical analyses, which is just a fancy word for studying ancient plant remains, revealed preserved olive pits, grape seeds, and pollen trapped in sealed soil layers beneath the church floor. And these weren't just like random seeds scattered about, they were actually neatly organized into terraced planting beds lined by low stone walls. Exactly what you'd expect to see in a cultivated garden from the 1st century. As if that weren't enough, researchers also uncovered several rock-cut tombs carved directly into the bedrock. And these weren't just caves formed by nature, they were purposefully hand-chiseled chambers dating precisely to the era around Jesus' crucifixion. Again, just as the Gospels describe.
Check out Cameron's whole episode linked below for more on that. But I want to respond to a few points that Stephen Woodford, an atheist commenter from Rationality Rules, made in reply to Cameron, because Stephen really made a big deal out of nothing in his reply.
The logical fallacy here is rather obvious. Cameron's essentially arguing that the gospel says someone was buried in a rock-cut tomb outside the city walls. We found rock-cut tombs outside of the city walls, therefore the gospel account is historically accurate. Again, by using this logic, archaeologists discovering Troy, as described in Homer's Iliad, would prove that Achilles was actually the son of a goddess. This should be obvious, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it is obvious to most Christians, surely. But finding the setting doesn't validate the supernatural claims made about what happened there.
No,
but it does lend, and maybe Trent's just says, it obviously lends credence. So in other words, if you were trying to disprove that Jesus was buried in a tomb or lived at all or died at all, then you would expect there to be inconsistencies, and this is yet another consistency. So he goes, well, it's not infallible proof that the supernatural claims are accurate, obviously. Yeah, it's like, but it's also not anything for your position. It actually weakens your position that there, say, was no Jesus, or he didn't die, or we don't know anything about where he was buried, stuff like that. So, Rationality Rules be doing slow boy stuff. Yeah, he really be a slow boy. Welcome back, Numenon. Glad to have you back. Very happy you still love me after I abandoned you for 2 weeks. But I'm back. Thank you for joining.
but it provides more evidence for that supernatural conclusion.
If you guys new and on, stick around after this video. We're going to do a real slow boy analysis of someone that thinks that they've disproven tag, and their argument is horrible. So we're going to try to do that ourselves, and then maybe we can look up an actual response to him. But I want to see if we can, using our own powers of mind and rationality, figure out exactly how this guy who thinks he disproved tag, where he went wrong, what his fallacies are. Maybe he's strawmanning tag. I don't know. We'll see.
There is no way to directly prove a miracle like the resurrection or Christ's ascension through archaeology. But historical sciences do provide empirical facts that can lead to a supernatural conclusion. For example, critics like John Dominic Crossan claim Jesus wasn't buried in a tomb at all, and his body, like the body of other criminals, was thrown in a pit to be devoured by wild animals. And so he claims the gospel account is a legend about his burial in a tomb. But archaeological finds like the skeleton of a man named Jehoanan show that crucified criminals were buried in tombs. Also, Cameron is not saying, here's a tomb, therefore Jesus is God, like in Whitford's Troy example. Cameron's saying it's striking that the traditional tomb of Christ in a 4th century church also happens to be around other tombs that were built centuries earlier, thus confirming this site was not part of a later legend, but fits perfectly with the claim that Jesus of Nazareth was killed and then buried among other new tombs. And the same is true of there being a garden, which, contrary to Woodford's claim, weren't all over the place, but would be a unique thing to find in this location that further corroborates John's claims. All of this confirms historical details that make the natural facts supporting the resurrection more reliable. Christ died by crucifixion, was buried in a locatable tomb. His followers claimed to see him physically alive 3 days later, and they were capable of checking his tomb to see if it was truly empty. Number 3, a new defense of Josephus' testimony about Jesus. Some people ask me if there's evidence for Jesus outside the Bible, and there is. But even if there weren't, the Bible is not an invalid source. It's like many other ancient documents, and so it can be used to demonstrate truths about the ancient world. That said, there are some early non-Christian witnesses to Jesus. One of them is Flavius Josephus, a Jewish historian employed by the Romans who wrote a history of the Jewish war against Rome and a history of the Jewish people called the Antiquities. In Book 20 of the Antiquities, the brother of Jesus who was called Christ, whose name was James, is authentic. What's more controversial is where Josephus says this about this man, if indeed one ought to call him a man, for he was one who performed surprising deeds and was a teacher of such people as accept the truth gladly. He won over many Jews and many of the Greeks. He was the Christ. And when upon the accusation of the principal men among us, Pilate had condemned him to a cross, those who had first come to love him did not cease. He appeared to them, spending a 3rd day restored to life, for the prophets of God had foretold these things and 1,000 other marvels about him. And the tribe of the Christians so called after him has still to this day not disappeared.
And still to this day, not disappeared. How nice is that? How incredible. Unlikely. Powerful. I mean, so this is Josephus. What an amazing quote. Josephus is not considered a Christian, although if he really believes that Jesus is the Christ, the Jewish Messiah, then I think that does make you a Christian. I'm not sure Josephus' whole history. But yeah, this is a Jewish historian just laying out the facts as he knows it from his time, which was very, very early on in the church. The main thing that he's known for documenting is the fall of the temple in 70 AD. And that, interestingly enough, is something that Jesus foretold in Luke. And then that's why scholars, critical scholars, put Luke like after 70 AD, having been written after 70 AD. And my understanding is the only reason they do that is because they deny that there could be any legitimate prophecy from before 70 AD, because it was unlikely. It was not a given that the temple would fall exactly when Jesus said it would, or at all, really. But anyway, we'll keep going.
After him, most scholars believe Josephus did refer to Jesus, but that this passage has been subject to Christian revisions over time. That's because Josephus was an unconverted Jew, so he would never have said Jesus was the Messiah or the Christ.
Right.
Origen even says in his commentary on Matthew that Josephus did not accept Jesus as Christ. The reference of Jesus rising on the third day would also be out of place for an unconverted Jew. But scholars don't think the entire passage is a forgery, because there are other phrases that make it unlikely a Christian invented the whole thing, which itself would also be unheard of because Christians did not alter Josephus anywhere else, nor did they alter the first century text of the Jew Philo, who discussed ideas relevant to Christianity but never mentions Jesus. For example, the passage in Josephus calls Jesus a wise man, which is not a Christian description of Jesus because it makes it sound like Jesus was merely a man. Likewise, Josephus says that Christians belong to a tribe, but Christians did not describe themselves in this way. For a while, I held to the partial authenticity theory, but now I'm much more open to the idea that the entire passage is authentic, and have come across new answers to other common objections to this claim. This past May, T.C. Schmidt, who earned a PhD at Yale, has published a book with Oxford University Press called Josephus and Jesus: New Evidence for the One Called Christ. Schmidt has done extensive word analysis of the passage to show that the vocabulary adheres to Josephus's style. It's not something the typical forger would produce. Schmidt's also shown the passage fits in the context of the surrounding narrative in Josephus and has answered many similar objections claiming the passage is not authentic. He also does a good job showing how Josephus's original testimony about Jesus was probably neutral or even negative, which explains why Christians didn't cite this passage until later in church history. Other manuscripts show that the phrase, "he was the Christ," was probably rendered, "he was called Christ," which matches what Josephus says in Book 20. Also, if a Christian had interpolated the phrase, they probably would have said Jesus is the Christ in the present tense. Likewise, the phrase, "if he be called a man," is probably not from a Christian revision, but from Josephus thinking Jesus may have been a wonder worker or a sorcerer, which falls in line with ancient Jewish polemics against Jesus. And the line about Jesus appearing to the disciples on the third day probably went more like this given the grammar of the passage and the textual evidence. He appeared to them to be alive on the third day, given that the divine prophets had spoken such things and many other marvels about him. In other words, Josephus was describing what the disciples believed or what it appeared to the disciples without necessarily endorsing their beliefs. Finally, mythicists who say Jesus never existed often claim that even if some version of this passage were authentic, this doesn't prove anything because Josephus probably got his information from second-generation Christians who may have already believed in a mythic spiritual Jesus or got it from the Gospels themselves. But Schmidt shows that when Josephus uses sources, like the Jewish letters from Aristeas, he often copies phrases word for
Okay, yeah, so to the chat, Numenon, I think the Josephus thing might be a forgery, but the original probably still talks about Jesus and his early followers. I think that's probably true. Although I am intrigued by these arguments. Like, there is, especially if he says he was called the Christ, instead of he was the Christ. I mean, that could be something Josephus would say, being a non-converted Jew. The other stuff is a little bit harder, like the fact that he's like, and he rose on the third day. Like, I don't know how that could not be a forgery and you also be a legitimate unconverted Jew. So it's interesting. I have no real like position on that or real opinion about that, but I'm willing to accept that it's like partially a forgery and partially not. I bet that book's pretty interesting. So Vrindavan, do you have a job? Sorry for the J slur. That is a slur. Job is a slur to me because I don't have a job. I don't have a job. It depends on what you mean by a job, right? I have work. I do work. I do stand-up comedy, and I do this. But is the question, do I make any money? No. The answer is no, I don't make any money. So it depends on what you mean by the question. So I acknowledge my blessings, the position that the Lord has put me in to be where I'm at. And if he calls me to go work in an office and sell solar panels to stay-at-home moms, then that's exactly what I'll do. But for now, he wants me to be here doing this. So, okay, let's do the other video. I think that's going to be more fun, and I'll have more stuff to say. That was somewhat interesting. I don't think that's really going to change anybody's mind, what we just watched. But very good, just extra biblical, a few of it extra biblical proofs for at least the existence
In
of
today's
Jesus.
episode, we're going to
So when anybody comes and say, well, Jesus might not have actually existed, well, take a look.
Welcome everybody to another Argument for God Debunked video, where we're going to talk today about the transcendental argument for God, commonly known as the tag argument. So let's get started.
Transcendental argument for God debunked. Good luck. Good luck. How do you debunk the transcendental categories? It's a worldview audit of your worldview. So we'll see. What job opportunities exist for theology majors other than McDonald's and Wendy's? Good question. None. Pretty much none. If you want the real answer, a lot of people that study theology and don't become like academics or whatever, they become HR manager. Like if you're going to go work in the corporate world with either a philosophy or a history or a theology degree, usually what you're looking at is HR. What does that stand for again? Like human resources. So, they figure like, oh, you can write things, you're kind of good with people and words, then yeah, we'll let you be the thought police in our corporate office. That's essentially what my opportunities are. Yeah, Nothin, you've seen this guy, Mike Burgandy, before. He actually, and we could go to this, which would be really interesting, but he had a debate with Jim Bob. I'm not sure if you know Jim Bob. I'm starting to like him more and more the more I watch of him. And Jim Bob just destroys him. But Mike has this, doesn't even realize he's being destroyed. So I want to see if we can destroy Mike Burgandy's debunking of tag without the help of Jim Bob or Jay Dyer. But if we need their help, then we'll go see what they have to say about this stuff. So, but I bet we can do it. I believe in us. We're not slow boys. We're medium boys. Mike's a slow boy.
So basically the tag argument goes something like this. We know that there's logic in the world, right? We use logic to understand truths. We use logic to understand reality. But where does this logic come from, right? We know that logic seems to be universal. It seems to be that everywhere you go in the universe, it applies. Logic applies. It also seems that logic is absolute. No matter what anybody says, it's always true.
I mean, that's just another way to say universal, but yeah, he debated Jay Dyer. That'd be interesting because I haven't seen that, so maybe we will go to the Jay Dyer Mike debate. That'd be fun. But so he's like, already when he's setting this up, it seems like he doesn't really have the form of the argument down. He's just saying I don't know, we'll see. I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but
doesn't matter what you say or I say. Logic, what's logical is always going to be what's true. If the conclusions follow from the premises, then that logic is true. And it seems like logic isn't material, right? If I say where does logic exist, you can't point to it. There's no physical object you can point to. And
so
say
far we're
where,
good.
That's where logic is.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems as if we've created this entity that must ground logic. It has to be immaterial because logic is immaterial. It has to be universal. It has to be absolute. It can't change because logic doesn't change. So let's call this entity God. God.
That is just not. Vrindamon says, what do you value more in life, logic or intuition? Well, I don't really value my intuition very highly. So I guess logic, perhaps. I mean, they're kind of the same, right? Because if I have intuition that is illogical, then I know my intuition is wrong. And I guess if someone makes a logical argument that where the outcome is something that's just intuitively horrific, like say slavery is just as good as non-slavery, right? That would be the moral argument. Then I know that's wrong, but I still have to figure it out logically. So I'm not sure which one I value more. So Newman says there's so many tag arguments, and Mike seems to argue against the Matt Slick type tag argument. I don't know Matt Slick. That's interesting. I think what he's arguing against is the presuppositional argument, and he's misunderstanding it, where the presuppositional argument isn't that we must presuppose God. It's that you must presuppose all the transcendental categories what can explain the transcendental categories? God can explain the transcendental categories. So it's not. So let's go through his premises here and see if they even follow. Like, see if he even has the argument down. So logical absolutes exist. Agree with premise 1. Logical absolutes are conceptual. Agree with premise 2. Concepts exist in, I would say, a mind, but in the mind only. They are mental concepts. Yeah, by definition, that's a concept. Yeah, so let's get through this. And then logical absolutes would exist even if your minds did not. Completely agree with premise 4. Premise 5, therefore logical absolutes are transcendent. Yeah, by definition. Premise 6, since logical absolutes are transcendent and conceptual, they must exist in a transcendent mind. Great. This transcendent mind is what we recognize as God. God exists. Conclusion. That's fine. I think that's fine. This transcendent mind is that we recognize as God. That's sort of like a leap, maybe. That's why it's like that's why the transcendental argument refers to an entire paradigm. It's not like a straightforward, because this is true, right? It's a paradigm. So if all of the transcendental categories exist this way, what can explain all of them together? It's not just logic, right? So this is fine, but he's addressing the existence of logic and how that relates to tag. We can work with this. So far, he's not doing too bad. It's a little sketchy how he jumps from piece 7 to the conclusion, but or actually from piece 6 to piece 7, because that just seems arbitrary. But we'll see.
Is what grounds logic and the preconditions required for intelligibility and rationality and logic and truth. Now, at first, this might seem like a good argument. I mean, if something's true, it's true regardless of what you say, and even if everybody didn't exist as people, well, it would still be true that trees existed before us, or that the earth existed before us, right? That statement would still be true.
Mm-hmm.
So there has to be some kind of mind that transcends all of our minds, which grounds these truths in logic. But here's where the argument fails, and it really fails for two big reasons. The laws of logic, or technically speaking, the laws of thought, are not prescriptive necessarily when it comes to reality. Laws of logic are merely descriptive. In other words, they act to describe reality. Logic itself is a language. It's a model of reality that humans use to describe how things operate.
Great. And he just goes, this is where it fails. Logic is pre. Okay, I'll get to you in a second, Newman. That's interesting. I agree with you that coherence is the best way to argue it. Okay, but so yeah, but you're right, Newman. This is good. So you say the way I usually argue tag is by taking a coherence theory view where a belief system is only true when it doesn't have internal contradictions. And then I try to argue that the assumption of God is what prevents a belief system from self-contradicting. That is a much stronger. That would be the steel man, in my view. This is somewhat of a straw man. But also, even let's just take what he's saying. Like, let's grant him a bunch of the premises that he's presenting here. He goes, logic is prescriptive. It's not descriptive. Great. So does it exist? Do any of these premises here require logic to be prescriptive? Any of them? I don't see a single one. So maybe he'll unpack why that is the case. So let's listen.
So when it comes to reality, are merely descriptive. Now,
merely these. He hasn't refuted the fact that they're conceptual, abstract. They're merely descriptive. Okay. What about the argument? So you're describing the laws of logic describe things. Great. Now we're back to the question: do they exist? Are they universal? Are they non-conceptual? And then he's saying this is where the argument fails. Okay.
In other words, they act to describe reality. Logic itself is a language of reality that humans use to describe how things operate. The three classical laws of logic, right? Non-contradiction.
And everything is the same as itself. Yep. Law of non-contradiction. Nothing can both exist and not exist at the same time and in the same respect. The law of excluded middle. Something either exists or does not exist, or every statement is either true or false. Okay, great. So you're saying this fails descriptive of the way that nature works rather than prescriptive, as in these weren't created first or something and then inform how nature goes about its business, although they actually do prescribe nature. Because, for instance, if nature were to say, I'm going to create something through evolution and magical chemistry that is not the same as itself, could nature actually do that? No, of course not. So the laws of logic actually are prescriptive. Nature behaves. Nature could not possibly behave a different way. It's confined by, it's ruled by transcendental category. Even if he was right, doesn't disprove the argument. Even if he, like, he's not even right about it. But even if he were, it wouldn't disprove the argument. So, anyway.
Think about the world around us. If I have a bottle, it's a bottle and not a car. A equals A. These are ways our minds describe how things work around us.
Oh, it's ways our minds describe how things work around us? Or it's the way that things actually work around us prior to our minds? Remember, that was like premise 4. So now he's just throwing out premise 4, not refuting it, and saying, no. It's not universal. Our minds make logic behave the way it is or describe logic the way it is. Yeah, that's not the question. The question is, what is it? Where does it exist? And in what manner? Okay.
So the laws of logic themselves are merely thought processes in our minds.
Oh, okay.
But reality itself, the things we're describing through this logic, right, what we call reality, that is a separate thing. So just understand that logic is separate from reality in the sense that there is an existence, whatever the ontology of nature, right, whatever the nature of reality is still unknown to us. We don't know what exactly it is with absolute certainty. But there is something there. We call it existence. And we use our logic to describe this, of course. But logic wouldn't exist without minds. Human.
Yeah, that's literally the point, dummy. It exists. It's out there. It's universal. It's objective. But logic, we create that in our minds. He's literally just asserting this and canceling out like half of the for how we create logic. Like, we have all these premises, one of them being logic exists independent of our minds, and then 3 minutes into the without any argument, that's not true. We create logic. Okay, what's your argument for that? If we create it, then did the law of identity apply to nature? Whether it's prescriptive or descriptive, which doesn't even matter. Did it exist? Did it apply to nature? And if it's what you just said is true, that logic only exists in a mind, then of course there's a universal mind for it to exist universally. I mean, and like, again, Numenon, the coherence theory is even stronger. So he's not even arguing the strongest version of the transcendental argument, but he can't even refute the weaker version using only one category, logic. Like, there's still morality, there's still the uniformity of nature, there's still space and time, the past and the future. Like, there's still all these categories that this argument doesn't apply to. He's literally just taking one and insufficiently refuting it. like with no argument essentially so far. Let's see if he gets an argument out.
Human minds, aka these descriptions of reality, wouldn't exist without our minds.
Yeah, but what's the reality? Like, yeah, the descriptions wouldn't exist because we describe things, but what is the reality? What are we describing, in other words? What is the referent for our description? That's what the transcendental argument deals with. It doesn't care whether you are able to see or describe logic. It cares whether it exists universally and conceptually. So there's no refutation here.
So what these theists are doing when they say logic is reality, they're confusing the map for the territory.
Oh,
or
sure.
the map
Oh,
for the
yeah.
game. Here, an example is GTA 5, right? When you play
Yeah.
GTA 5, there's a world that these characters exist in.
Mhm.
That's a real world, well, virtually speaking. But what the theist is doing analogously is simply saying, well, here's a map of GTA 5. We
Yep.
have a map. The theist would say that that map is the same thing as reality. When we
Not true. Literally not true at all. When did we say that the map, when did we say that our understanding is the same as objective reality, objective truth? We never said that. We say objective reality exists, therefore there can be a map for objective reality. So our argument is not like, this is the map, so it's the exact same thing as the real world. Or like, let's use this GTA analogy. For this map to exist in GTA, doesn't there have to be an actual world that you can traverse? Like, didn't they actually have to code all those streets and buildings and guns you can pick up and planes you can fly? Like, this is so dumb. This is such a straw man of what the transcendental argument is. But
we obviously know it's not. The map is merely a model of what we think the game is. Right?
Mhm.
It's just a secondary model we use to describe the game.
also, it's hilarious that his example to like disprove the theist position is something that must have been created by a mind, i.e. a video game. Something that's meticulously, creatively formed by a mind, a creator. Like, the game could not exist if there wasn't a mind to order particulars together to make a game. Okay, so we'll go to Numenon here in the chat. Mike seems to be an empiricist, which is why Jay always slams empiricism as it should basically collapse into solipsism, where you couldn't know even the future or the past, 100%. Or, more importantly, maybe, morality, ethics. You can justify absolutely any ethical position from the empirical position, from the empiricist worldview. For example, if logic only exists in the human mind, then how do you know logic actually works universally and not just in the human mind? Great question, Numenon. I would absolutely love to ask Mike this. Again, he did this weird thing where he presented the argument. So we're at 426. So here's the argument. Premise 2, logical absolutes, or even premise 1, logical absolutes exist. So Mike says, nope, logical absolutes do not exist. What's my evidence for that? Well, you're describing the map, not the reality. Well, how do you know what the reality is? Also, if logical absolutes do not exist, and logic is subjective to your mind, then how are you making an absolute claim about how logic exists? Isn't that so ironic? He goes, well, actually, logic is created by the human mind. It's a subjective, epiphenomenal experience that arises out of a human brain. And that is universally true. Anyone catch the problem there? Anyone catch the inherent self-contradiction? I know what is universally true about logic, except that logic is only subjective. Right. Nice try, Mac. Nice try, Mike. Okay, then we get someone named Gaming Goddess with 1 S. Hello, my headphones aren't working right now. Can you chat instead? By the way, which game do you stream the most? Thank you, Mr. Bot. I'm not buying anything today, but I appreciate you dropping in and pumping up the numbers. I don't really I play the game of life, Gaming Goddess. Sometimes I play Night Rain, but now I play the game of life. All right.
Truth. Now, at first, this might seem like a good argument. I mean, yeah, if something's true, it's true regardless of what you say.
But yeah, so
And
let's.
even if everybody didn't exist as people, well, it would still be true that trees existed before us, or that the
Yeah, or logic itself, but yeah.
earth existed before us, right? That statement would still be true. So there has to be some kind of mind that transcends.
Yeah, this is where he's just straw mans. Like, he's missing so many steps between these things. But, yeah. Okay, we'll go back to, we were at like 4.
Something that we can make up and change whenever we want to? No. Because logic is a set of principles, right? It's a set of axioms.
Principles. Oh,
that
axioms.
are defined to be certain things.
Oh, interesting. They're principles and axioms, but they're actually not mind dependent. They're not universal, but they are principles. They're not conceptual, but they are principles. Yeah, nice try.
In other words, the conclusions we make in logic are analytically true. They're true by definition. And who defines these things? Who defines these axioms?
I do. Mike Brigandy. I get to define all the axioms. Whatever I deem to be logical is logical, is essentially what he's saying. Okay, logical absolutes are axioms. So what happens if you have a different axiom? Does that mean you can contradict yourself? Does that mean you can be both Mike and not Mike? This is dumb. This is like very slow boy argumentation.
We do. We are the ones who define axioms. It's not that logic itself is subjective. It's that the definitions as to how we use logic is subjective. Much like math. If I have an equation, right, 1 + 1 = 2, well, that is going to be absolutely true, no matter what.
Oh, good.
1, as defined as one entity, plus another one of those entities, is going to be 2, as defined as 2 entities, right?
Agree.
So, with absolute certainty, we can say that 1 + 1 = 2. That is absolutely certain.
Sure.
But if we just simply redefined these concepts of 1, if we redefined 1 to mean 2 entities, well, now 1 + 1 = 4.
Idiot.
That's still absolutely true, based on the definitions we preset for these concepts.
It's not absolutely true. It's a word concept fallacy. So 1 we define as tracking to a concept, right? The concept of oneness, of one individual or one particular. So if you redefined 1, like if you used, say there was another language and they had the same language as English, but instead of going 0, 1, 2, 3, they went 0, 2, 1, 3 and just named the number 1 into 2 or whatever, then the absolute statement of, like, the concept of 1 + 1 is still equaling 2. It's just you're calling it a different thing. So he hasn't proved it. Like, this is so weird that his argument for against mathematics is semantic. Like, of course there are other languages. Like, is he saying that 2 plus 2 does not equal 4, right? 2 plus 2 in German doesn't equal 4 in German. It's totally semantic, and it has no meaning. Just like his video, it has no meaning. Oh, yes, we could change the word 1 into the word 2. Yeah, but does that make the concept actually not absolutely true? Does that make mathematics invalid if you just change the word 1 to the word 2? That's atheists have to play these like semantic games because they don't have a basis for the actual concepts being conveyed. Like, they actually have no reason that you should trust mathematics if it's an emergent property of human brains. There's really no reason that there should be mathematics at all. So then when you go back to logic, it's especially untrue. So just he's saying, well, if we called it the law of schmidentity instead of the law of identity, then you can see that the law of identity doesn't track that really only the law of schmidentity is true. Like, no, dude, what are you talking about? A thing equals itself, no matter what language or what words you use to describe that phenomena. So, I don't know.
That's the point. We define what axioms mean. If the conclusion follows from these premises, then they are absolutely true. So that's how we can have logical absolutes and mathematical absolutes. not because there's some transcendent mind that is beyond us, but because we are the ones definitionally setting these things and defining them into existence.
Oh, so if you defined it another way, it wouldn't be the case then. We are the ones defining these things and setting them into existence. So if I said that a thing, so that A can equal A and A plus B and A plus B, C, D, and all these nonsensical things that don't track to any reality, then that would actually be true to Mike. For instance, 2 plus 2 can equal 5 to Mike Burgandy. Very empirical of you, brother. Much science, much good evidence. Hats off to you. I tip my fedora to thee, Mike Burgandy, for your Reddit arguments that make no sense. No, you don't define the logical absolutes into existence. You know how I know that? Because you didn't exist, and yet your father's sperm cell equaled your father's sperm cell that produced you. So the law of identity existed long before you, Mike Burgandy, or any human. Obviously it did. Or unless you're saying that a thing could equal something other than itself before you existed, which is what you're saying. Very empirical. Very much science, sir.
Logic is how our brains operate. We just do it. It's just how our brains operate. Our brains are able to think. Our neurons send out firings. They think certain thought processes, and a cascade of these thought processes lead to, axioms. And these different axioms lead to different structures. Syllogisms form. Right? And this is how logic operates in our minds. So our brains...
Syllogisms form. Isn't that so interesting? Also, he has this false... I know he has this view because of the Jim Bob debate, but he has this crazy view of determinism. So given that perspective added on to this whole thing, this is even more ridiculous. He actually has no reason to believe that the structures of his brain, like, okay, so, first the sun explodes and there's the Big Bang or whatever, and then, galaxies and planets and solar systems form according to these sort of laws that we created. Actually, we create them billions of years after they've already been happening. Human minds are the only thing that create, the fact that a planet is the same as itself, or that one meteor traveling next to another meteor means there's two meteors, right? We actually created that, even though our entire system for creating that is reliant on the fact that all those things happened and that they abided by logical laws and mathematical laws and the past and the present and the future and all the transcendental categories. I don't even know where I was going. This is just such a... Oh yeah, because he's a determinist. So when he says like, oh, actually our brain is just firing neurons and then the neurons tell us what to believe. What he's saying is my position is unvalidated. It hasn't been subject to any sort of choice for me to believe in it. Not like Mike's position. Mike is saying, as a determinist, all things are determined. They're part of a mechanical process. Therefore, there can't be any truth value coming out of the mechanical processes because machines don't make propositions. Machines don't make truth claims. They can't. They just spit out whatever their input tells them to spit out. So his belief in the transcendental argument being debunked, because it's determined, it cannot possibly be known to be true. And so when he's saying something that he has no idea if it's true or not, but also stating it as a universal claim. This thing just blows itself apart. Okay, yeah, Mike doesn't have free will, so he shouldn't be upset over these low-tier arguments. He can't help it. Yeah, exactly, Newman. Exactly. He does not have the free will. But see, that's the difference between Mike and me. I actually give him the credit. I give him the benefit of the doubt that he obviously exercises his free will to make these arguments, even if he denies his own free will. So I'm not going to give him any, under his worldview, you're right. He's allowed to be a moron. Actually, anybody's allowed to hold any moronic position because they don't have a choice to hold any other position. But because he's wrong, I'm going to call him a moron because he's wrong and because he has free will to change his mind and to come to God and to not be a slow boy anymore. He doesn't have to be slow for the rest of his life, but he might try. We'll see.
are the vehicles we use to drive logic. So it's not that we're presupposing logic, it's that we presuppose that logic leads to reliable results, and there's vast differences there. So we don't need anybody to look up to for logic, right? It emanates from us through our brains.
How about logic itself? Do you need to look up to logic itself, the referent, the real thing you're describing, in order to create your like lesser form of logic? It emanates from us through our brains. He's basically like a new age spiritualist. Like logic and mathematics, they're sort of like these ineffable, immaterial, absolute concepts. But you don't need God to tell you about those, man. They just exist. Like we create them, but they also exist. But we create them, but they also exist. But we create them, but they also exist before us. Do you see how delusional this argument is? How self-refuting, even within itself? Anyone else says he's determined to never get tagged, and he's determined to never see that he's determined not to get it. Maybe he shouldn't believe that he can spot defeaters or good arguments by trying. Yeah, you couldn't. How could you? If you're determined not to ever be able to spot a defeater, then of course you won't be able to. Which is maybe why he's not able to. He's like decided, like, I must be right. The thing behind all this is literally, I am God. I'm God. Humans are God. Logic only exists because we created it. Mathematics only exists because we created it. Life only exists because we created it. It's a certain pride that there could not be anything higher than you. Forget the fact that it's self-refuting. Just emotionally, it's prideful. Mike, let me ask you, in what way did you or any human create the law of identity? Who created it? Because in order to create it, it must not have existed, right? If you created something, it didn't exist before you created it. So if the law of identity didn't exist before you created it, then are you saying that things didn't equal themselves? That a thing was not the same as itself? That's like absolutely ludicrous. Determined by prior causes, I mean, kind of undermines his ability to reason if you think that you can be predetermined to have false beliefs. Yeah, there's no validity to reason if you're predetermined to have false beliefs that you can't actually choose to change, right? I mean, there might be like causal factors that lead you to have false beliefs. Like, for instance, if you're born into like, I don't know, a Buddhist family or something like that, or an atheist family, even more egregiously, then yeah, you're going to have like factors that make you that like push you into a certain track of belief. But the thing about being a human with free will, loved by God, loves us enough to give us free will and rational minds, is that you can actually choose to subvert wrong beliefs. You can choose to turn away from falsehoods. A determined biological machine actually has no choice to do that. And the way that they try to justify their choices or their reason, it never works. So,
but from that, then we're able to describe reality. So, to sum it all up, we can have a material reality in which thoughts, which are material, they're just electrochemical impulses in the brain produced by neurons. These are purely physical things.
Mm-hmm.
We could have a material reality, a natural physical reality, in which we have logic. We've just grounded logic in nature.
How did he ground logic in nature? First of all, even if what he said made sense, which it didn't, I'll unpack that. That's an assertion, dude. That's not an argument. Well, actually, the neurons, the electrochemical impulses which are caused by the neurons actually create the laws of logic. They create the law of identity. Boom. See? We did it. We've grounded logic in nature. No, you just asserted that you can do something which is like fundamentally impossible. So he already like conceded or stated, I don't even know if he conceded it. Clearly, he didn't mean to if he did. That logic is immaterial, okay? Is logic immaterial? Yes or no? Now, obviously, the answer is that logic is immaterial. So how does he get this connection between a material thing, the neurons and the electrochemics and all that stuff, how does he connect that to something immaterial? Or does he just say it doesn't exist? Like, there is no immaterial logic. If that's the case, if he's saying logic itself is material, great, show it to me. What is it? Where is it under a microscope? What kind of atoms is it made of? What's its electrochemical makeup? How many electrons are paired to the logic atom? Right? I mean, how ridiculous is this? It's actually insane that he thinks this is a debunking of tag. Cool, dude. Logic is material. Well done. Just state an assertion 7 minutes into the video with still no argument.
Completely valid. It's a completely valid concept.
Oh, well, if you said it is. Oh, well, then if you said... Oh, wait, it's a concept? Wait a second. Wait. It's a completely valid concept? You mean something immaterial and mind-dependent? A concept? Interesting. Oh, so concepts are material. Oh, cool. Concepts are material. That's great, man. Where do you find a concept exactly under a microscope again? How do you subject a concept to the scientific method? This is just so funny. And it's also just I thought it was funny that he's just stating. He's like, see, it's valid. Trust me, bro. His argument is, it's valid. Trust me, bro.
So, in that sense, you don't need a god or a transcendent mind to ground logic nor math or anything in the universe. Everything we know about reality can be traced back to our minds. And the same applies to truth.
Wow. Whoa,
Truth
really?
is that which
Whoa.
describes accurately reality, what is. So when a theist asks
You're
that the
blowing
truth
my
statement
mind,
that the Earth
dude.
exists, is that still true without humans?
Yes.
Yes, it's true. Only
Oh, wait. What? I'm going to let him finish, but... hold on.
because there is somebody to describe it. But without anybody describing that truth, there is no truth at all. Truth is...
Yeah, I completely agree. That's why we need God to describe truths. Actually, not describe them, but know them perfectly and sort of outside of time, in order for things like the consistent... What is it called? Not the consistency of nature. The... well, you know what I'm saying. Wait, let's see. Numenon, he argues by assertion. It just is, and I just know that it just is. Unbeatable. Literally. That's his unbeatable argument against tag. Assert that all things are physical, even when it makes no sense. He's provided no argument. When he's already conceded that there are immaterial things, like concepts, which he used in the sentence to say that it's valid. And then he goes, well, when a theist asks you, is it true that the earth exists prior to humans? Yes, it is true. Oh, okay, so there is truth prior to humans? But it's only true because we created truth. Oh, so there wasn't an earth prior to humans? Because, well, we created statements that are true, statements that conform to reality. So there couldn't have been true statements before humans, so it's not true that the earth existed. Is that really your argument, bro? This is actually stupid. It's actually so insane.
It's merely descriptive as well, just like logic. Truth has a separate ontology to nature, just as logic does. Theists want to tether them together, whereas we don't have to.
Wait. Oh my goodness. Are you seeing? Look at this face is perfect for what he just did. So he goes, before in the video, he says, oh, by assertion, again, he just goes, truth and logic and transcendental categories are material. They can all be explained and grounded and justified by material processes, electrochemical processes. And then 2 seconds later, he says, actually, they have a different ontology, which I agree with. Immaterial things and material things have a different ontology. And then he said, so we don't have to connect nature and truth and nature and logic. Wait, so you're refuting your own thing you just said like not even 3 minutes ago in the video? Like, I don't even need to point out that it's self-refuting. He's refuting himself. Let's listen to that again. That's wild.
It's true. only because there is somebody to describe it. But without anybody describing that truth, there is no truth.
Look at that. Look what he just did there, too.
But without anybody describing that truth.
Oh, wait. That truth? Wait, describing that truth. So you're describing something that exists, i.e. truth. But if there were no one to describe it, then there wouldn't be truth. So truth is just description? It's just whatever you decide to describe? I mean, that's crazy.
There is no truth at all. Truth is merely descriptive as well, just like logic. Truth has a separate ontology to nature, just as logic does. Theists want to tether them together.
No, we're literally doing the opposite. I think he got confused or something. He's saying truth and nature, theists want to tether them together. Not really. That's not what we were doing. You're the one that said all truth comes from nature, which makes no sense, but all truth comes from mechanical processes and stuff like that. But then you're critiquing us for your position? So you're saying we're wrong because we hold the position that you hold, which we don't. Very interesting, Mike Brigandy. Maybe I should become an atheist. Numenon says, Mike should become a solipsist. If a thing exists when it's observed, then why postulate anything beyond what you're currently observing? I completely agree. And why postulate what you're observing? Because you can't even know that that's true, according to him.
Whereas we don't have to. There can be separate, hence truth just needs a mind. Like
No, agree. Truth needs a mind. Okay, he's getting closer to there. So truth exists prior to human beings, and it needs a mind. What does that mean, Mike? Come on. It's like feeding a baby with like an airplane, like a pretend airplane. Come on, Mike. You're so close. You're so close. Truth needs a mind. Truth exists prior to humans.
human mind. And that's it. You don't need a transcendent God to ground truth, logic, or math, right?
Oh, I'm glad
so
you
can
asserted
probably
that.
See here, the next main issue for the argument is that it's begging the question: why must your worldview only account for logic and all these things? What's the reasoning behind that? Why?
Because your worldview doesn't. How about that? The impossibility of the contrary. How about the complete incoherence of everything you've just said? Like refuting yourself from literally from sentence to sentence. Is that a good reason not to accept your worldview? How about if I have a worldview which doesn't have to self-refute, which is completely consistent and coherent? That seems like actually a good reason to hold the worldview. So if there's no inconsistency in my worldview, and the only thing that you can show as inconsistent in my worldview is a bald assertion which refutes itself, why exactly would I have your worldview? Why would I not take the coherent, consistent one that makes sense? Not only makes sense, but grounds all the things you're actually using to make your claims, like reason, logic, the consistency of nature, or whatever, uniformity of nature. Like, yeah. No, yeah, Numenon. It all does come back to that. I mean, if an atheist is genuinely asking me, well, why should I hold my worldview, the Christian one, and not their worldview? I'll just say, because your worldview contradicts itself, and mine doesn't. So literally, why would I hold your worldview if it contradicts itself? As is shown by this ridiculous video. I mean, this video is insane. Okay.
Why can't we ground all these things in a natural reality or material?
We do ground it in an actual reality, an immaterial reality. That's the only way they can be grounded. They're immaterial. They're concepts. They're abstract and universal. Getting it, Mike? Hello? Anybody there? Are you getting it? Now, if he's going to ask, why can't we ground it in a material reality? Easy. Because immaterial things can't be grounded in material things. Because that would mean that the material things led to the existence of the immaterial things. So tell me, Mike, in what way do neurons and human brains lead to the existence of the law of identity? Or 1 + 1 = 2? Huh? In what way, Mike? Because you had to have a brain which was identical to itself prior to the point that you made that ridiculous statement that things don't have to equal themselves. So How do you do it?
Material reality. Where's the logical contradiction? Because if you're going to say that it's impossible for any other worldview to account for these things or to ground all these things, these
Yep.
preconditions,
Yep.
give the syllogism.
Here's the syllogism. You want the syllogism? It's been given to you. You actually did it. Oh, you want the syllogism? Why don't I just rewind a minute to a minute and 45 seconds? It's a if you need logical if you need immaterial things to account for logic, if you need a universal transcendent mind to account for universal transcendent concepts, give the syllogism. Dude, you already gave the syllogism 5 minutes before, and you didn't refute any of the premises except by assertion. Logical absolutes exist. You assert that they don't. Why is that? Makes no sense if they don't, right? Logical absolutes are conceptual. You assert, well, you actually say that they are conceptual. So, fair, put credit to you. Concepts exist in the mind only. I think you agree with that. Logical absolutes would exist even if your minds did not. That's where you assert that this is not true, but you haven't shown that. Is your argument really that the law of identity does not apply to meteors or whatever before human minds come about? Who's the anti-scientific one here? Do you think you could actually do science? Do you think you could find any empirical evidence about, say, states of the universe before humans existed if you couldn't rely on the law of identity to apply throughout the universe? Like, that is just silly. And it's a bald assertion based on nothing that you've given no argument for. Therefore, logical absolutes are transcendent, of course, but you by assertion deny premise 4 and premise 1. So that's the syllogism. That's the syllogism. If you don't have an argument against premise 1, which you don't, and you don't have an argument against premise 4, which you don't, and you just say they're wrong without any argument, then I'm never going to accept your worldview. That actually, like, who would do that? A fool, and perhaps someone who's determined to believe things that are false would do that. Let's see if yeah. Dummy, dude, dummy. You already gave the syllogism.
Have to. There can be separate, hence, truth just needs a mind. A human mind. And that's it.
Truth just needs a mind. A human mind, and that's it. Source, trust me, bro. Source, trust me, bro. Very big brain, bro. Very big stuff by Mike Big Brigandy. Big Brain Gandy.
You don't need a transcendent God to ground truth, logic, or anything.
I was wondering about that. I was wondering if you needed a transcendent mind to ground transcendent universal concepts. But since Mike said you don't, then I guess you don't. I guess you really don't need a transcendent mind to ground transcendent concepts. Because Mike said so, guys. Did you hear? Everybody, Mike said it. So it must be true. Good job, dude. Nice video.
So you can probably see here, the next main issue for the argument is that where's the logical contradiction? Because
where?
actual reality or material reality, where's the logical contradiction?
Because if there were the logical contradiction, if you want to know, is that a thing, according to your worldview, equals itself and does not equal itself prior to the existence of human minds. That's the logical contradiction. Does that satisfy? Like, let's watch that again, and I'll pretend that I'm talking to him in person, right? And maybe I'll clip this or something. Okay.
Truth has a separate ontology to nature, just as logic does. Theists want to tether them together, whereas we don't have to. There can be separate, hence, truth just needs a mind. A human mind. And that's it. You don't need a transcendent God to ground truth, logic, or math, or anything. So you can probably see here, the next main issue for the argument is that it's begging the question. Why must your worldview only account for logic and all these things? What's the reasoning behind that? Why can't we ground all these things in a natural reality or material reality? Where's the logical contradiction?
Okay. He asked, why can't you ground logic in a human mind? Why can't you ground it in materiality or physicality? And he asked, what's the logical contradiction? As if this is some sort of slam dunk against theism. But I don't think he knows that there is an obvious logical contradiction. In fact, the contradiction is logic itself, given his worldview. If the laws of logic, let's just do the law of identity, is created by human minds, according to Mike Brigandy, it is, then prior to the existence of human minds, a rock or a tree or a meteor or a star could equal itself and not itself. That's the logical contradiction, Mike. Will you become a theist now? If the law of identity didn't exist prior to human beings, then the law of identity did not exist to not tell things, but to inform nature that a thing equals itself and doesn't equal itself. So literally, the logical contradiction is the most fundamental contradiction there could be. It contradicts the law of identity. If we created it, then before we were around to create it, it didn't apply. Contradiction. That's why I don't hold your worldview. That's why your worldview, atheism, physicalism, materialism, is incoherent, incomplete, nonsensical, and there's bigger problems. It actually leads to your heart sort of decaying, and it leads to your mind decaying until you make dumb arguments like this. That's the logical contradiction, Mike. It's pretty obvious. It's pretty easy, actually. He said that so flippantly, like, what's the logical contradiction? Huh? Well, what's the logical contradiction? How about the most obvious one, dummy? Probably a bunch of other ones, too. Okay, so Numenon says, also, I kind of looked into the problem of consciousness, which his physicalism can't account for either. Yeah, consciousness itself is immaterial. So how does a material thing create an immaterial thing, given Mike's worldview? I don't think he has an answer for that.
Because if you're going to say that it's impossible for any other worldview to account for these things or to ground all these things, these preconditions,
which it is.
The syllogism.
Boom, boom. Syllogism is right here. He already gave it. We already talked about that. You want the syllogism? Premise 1 against his worldview. Let's see if we can make it ourselves. Premise 1, according to him, logical absolutes do not exist. Premise 2, that is an absolute statement. Conclusion, your worldview contradicts itself. How about that? Is that a good enough syllogism? I just made that up on the spot. How does that work for you, Mike? Idiot.
Where's the contradiction? P and not P. What?
P and not literally. P and not P. I just showed you. P and not P. If the law of identity doesn't exist, then actually everything abides by P and not P. Anything could be P and not P, given your worldview. That's why it's incoherent. That's why it is meaningless to hold. Okay.
Why is it impossible for us to ground these things in a material reality? The argument is merely an assertion that nobody can ground logic except for Christians or Muslims.
That's so funny, dude. That he's like, this is what I mean. People in general do this. Atheists do it a lot, but people in general do this, and it's called projection. You project what you're doing. You project either the fallacy or the negative thought pattern or the negative emotion or anything like that. You project your own fallacy onto your opponents. I don't know why it happens. I think it's either like a trick of the devil or maybe it's like a psychological thing, but you always like project outwards the exact thing that you're doing onto your enemy, right? So he says Christians and theists, when they make this argument, which has not a single assertion in it, let's just be clear. I mean, if you think any of these things are just an assertion, then you have to argue against any of these things. But he hasn't provided any argument against any of them. But the things he disagrees with, P1 and P4, he just asserts to be false. He just asserts it. There's no argument. He has no evidence, no proof, no empirical evidence, which is also a major problem for his worldview, is that he's an empiricist, so he only believes things using empirical evidence, but there is no empirical evidence for logic or any transcendental category. So he actually can't believe in logic itself, which would make sense why he makes completely illogical assumptions and arguments. But, yeah.
Muslims who love to use the argument. It's merely an assertion. It's an obvious tautology. If you define God as an entity who grounds logic, well, then of course the logic is going to be valid when you say that God grounds logic.
That's not at all what anyone says. No one defines God as the thing that grounds logic. If you did define God that way, then Mike actually believes in God, and God is a human brain, which is just retarded. We define God in many ways in a sort of vast paradigm of his nature, his essence, his energies. And one of those things is a transcendent mind. Now, we've shown that transcendent concepts exist. Concepts are mind dependent. Therefore, a transcendent mind exists. And that's just one part of the argument. There's like 25 or more transcendental categories. So when it comes to ethics, we state it would go something like this. Objective morality exists. Therefore, an objective lawgiver or a universal lawgiver must exist to hold or sort of instantiate morality. Okay. So then we pair that together with this one, and suddenly we've got a moral being with a transcendent mind, and you're getting closer and closer to God. You build up to God. Nobody defines God as the reason for logic, as the thing that grounds logic. If that's actually a description for God, if that's how anybody defined God, or how Mike himself defines God, then he also believes in God. He just believes it's a human mind. I mean, how small of a concept of God would that be? Total straw man. Absolute straw man.
Syllogism, but it's merely a tautology. There's no
It's
evidence
not a
behind this
tautology.
entity. Whatever it means.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not a sound argument whatsoever. Another issue, but this is a minor issue, is if you're going to say that God grounds all these things, knowledge and logic and morality and all in mathematics and all these things, what you're doing is you're saying that God is equivalent to all of these things. How can God be equivalent to logic and morality at the same time? It seems to be that there's a contradiction there.
This is crazy. Who said that God was equivalent to morality? I mean, God is morality. God is goodness, more accurately. God is the good, right? And God is perfectly rational. But that doesn't mean that's all he is. That doesn't mean that if he is morality, or if he is goodness, for instance, then he can't be rational. Otherwise, what Mike's saying is, I have to choose one myself. I can only be good or rational. Well, he's not choosing to be rational, so at least I hope he's choosing to be good. But that doesn't even apply to a human, much less God. Like, it's already a category error, but it does. Even if he's right that God is like a being, like a created being, I mean, a creature, then his thing would still fail. That this argument would still fail because Mike is both good and rational. So, I mean, yeah, and also, yeah, that doesn't follow at all. Like Newmount says, why does God grounding X entail that God is X? That's a total confusion on Mike's part. Newmount says, I think that like a third of tag is just about trying to show the atheists that empiricism is untenable and that there must be something beyond the senses that gives us something like universals. Yeah. Yeah, that is usually the battle. A lot of them on a heart level can't accept that because really it's the fool that says in his heart God does not exist. We get that from the Psalms. So it's a heart problem. When people like Mike and other atheists that I talk to, they don't want to believe or they're blocked from believing. And unfortunately, that makes them make completely illogical, irrational arguments. And so tag is about pointing out that, okay, so you claim that empiricism is your king, logic is your God, rationality is your God. Let me just show you that you have no evidence at all to believe those things exist. In fact, the only evidence that would show that these things are real and reliable is the evidence for God, the being that grounds those things. So, yeah, gotta love the method of asserting your position and then claiming victory. It's crazy. It's like so condescending. That's why I'm being a little harsh with him, because he doesn't deserve any I don't see him as deserving any sort of like grace here. He's being really condescending and just making assertion after assertion after assertion and basically implying that the Christian is stupid for not believing Mike's assertions. Whatever Mike thinks must be right. The standard for truth is Mike's brain. The standard for morality is Mike's brain. The standard for logic is Mike's brain. I mean, nice argument, dude. Really nice argument.
In other words, God is logic and God is morality. That's like saying A equals A and A equals B.
Wait, but according to you, you can actually do that if human beings don't exist. So what's the problem? According to you, A can equal A and A can equal B, as long as there are no human minds to examine that. And also, according to you, human minds don't exist. It's actually just human brains that exist. And then we get this sort of illusory epiphenomena of a mind, but really it's just a brain and it's neurons and it's electrochemicals. So human minds actually don't exist. So the law of identity also doesn't exist because human minds create the law of identity. So God could be A and B. That's where this whole thing goes, you know. He's like, hey, you guys are nonsensical because God equals morality and love and logic and rationality and da 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 da. It's like, yeah, but under your worldview, there's nothing to say that the law of identity applies, especially prior to human minds. Like, that's how dumb this is. It's like, I can't believe it. This is the first video I put in a playlist I call Videos to Destroy. And I'm glad we were able to actually rip it apart. I wonder if there's any other... Maybe we'll go to the Jay Dyer debate, because I'm curious how he reacts to these arguments, and actually better arguments than I'm able to make from someone like Jay Dyer in real time. I can't imagine he handles it well at all. We'll see.
It doesn't make any sense, let alone the myriad of other possible questions that can arise from this logic. Well, how does God ground these things? What's the mechanism for God grounding these things? He just says they're true, or is God appealing to something else beyond him?
No.
It's kind of like an infinite regression.
Just slip in like a stupid Euthyphro dilemma right at the end. Just slip it in. That's also a straw man. God obviously doesn't appeal to anything higher or outside of himself. God is goodness, therefore goodness flows out of him. God is rational, therefore rationality is found in his created world. God is, whatever he's trying to argue. So, yeah, he's trying to slip in a Euthyphro dilemma. It's not valid.
That emerges, right? It's kind of like kicking the can down the road. Does God really solve this question?
Yes.
But those are just minor questions to ask later on. The main issue is that this argument is simply question begging. It's circular.
It's question begging. Wait, so where exactly where is the question being begged? Again, another assertion. This argument is just question begging. My thing though isn't question begging. When I say logical absolutes don't exist and then provide no argument for that, I'm not question begging. Whatever I believe is true, so it can't be begging the question. Logical absolutes would exist even if your minds did not. When I state as a matter of fact that this is untrue, but don't give any argument for why it's untrue, that's not question begging. That's not question begging at all. That's not circular. When I make an absolute statement that absolutes don't exist, that's not circular. That's not question begging. That's just ridiculous, man. It's actually ridiculous. And also where? Where is it question begging? I guess he gets confused about P7, and that's why I think P7 is poorly formed here. I don't know if he made this up or if he found it somewhere. I mean, it's fair enough. Like this, it works if you actually are taking the argument like sort of with a shred of like critical thought, or even like if you read it not compassionately, but like with like a little bit graciously, then you can see how this works. It could be a little stronger, but it's just not question begging. You're begging the question the entire time when you just, without evidence or logic, refute these premises as an assertion that they're just not true because I say they're not true. That's dumb.
Let alone the myriad of other possible questions that can arise from this logic. Well, how does God ground these things? What's the mechanism for God grounding these things? He just says they're true, or is God appealing to something else beyond him? It's kind of like an inference is merely a baseless assertion. So hopefully that helped you guys out. Please like, subscribe, comment.
Hopefully I helped you guys out. Hopefully my completely illogical, baseless assertions about the transcendental argument helped you guys out. Helped them out to what end, Mike? Also, why is it good to help people? Why is it good to help people, Mike? Huh? It's good to help people because you say it is? What if I say it's good to hurt people? What if I say it's good to make illogical statements and lead them down a false path of depression and anxiety? Is that good? Because there is no objective morality. So if I say something's good and you say another thing's good, we're actually both equally right, aren't we? Actually, neither of us are wrong or right. We're just enacting inputs and outputs of our biological machine of a body. Okay, it's hard to argue with Mike when his position just seems confused and strange. Like, he just asserts these things like grounding means you're the thing you're grounding and so on. Yeah. Is he saying that, that's a good point, actually. Is he saying like, well, the existence of a pillow, like, okay, the existence of a down pillow is grounded by the fact that there is linen and there are feathers. His argument is essentially that linen and feathers are pillows. Nice. Really good work, dude. Super logical, really helpful. You actually helped a lot of people today. I feel so helped. Oh my God, I was anxious and depressed because I thought there was no God that loved me and was taking care of me and wanted me to be safe and healed and happy and healthy. I thought there was no God. But now Mike showed me that there can't be by his own assertion and by saying that God that a pillow equals every feather and a pillow equals every piece of linen. I mean, it's just insane. Thank you for your help, Mike. Thank you. You helped me. Plus, he was arguing against Matt Slick's argument, which I think is a bad argument. Matt never establishes that the laws of logic are conceptual and not some platonic things that exist. Right. Well, that would be interesting. So maybe we'll look at him debating Jay Dyer if I can find that, because that sounds pretty good. His debate with Jim Bob was good, but it was very infuriating because he wasn't getting anything. He wasn't understanding the argument, which I shouldn't blame him. He clearly has a very illogical thought process and worldview. Like, he doesn't ground things. Things don't have to make sense for him to just state them as facts. They don't have to adhere to any reality, clearly. So it makes sense that he would not understand actual, genuine, reasonable arguments. William Grave goes, how does God reveal Jesus? Wrong. I don't even understand the question. But William Graves, if you're actually interested in the answer and you're not just trolling, God reveals Jesus by fulfilling hundreds of prophecies from the Old Testament to the New Testament. which describe exactly who the Son of Man is, exactly who the Messiah is, exactly the date that he will come and be dispatched. And all those things came true in history. We have historical evidence. Yeah, so well articulated. So the historical evidence for the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus is one way in which he reveals him. God reveals Jesus in our hearts. God reveals Jesus in Scripture. God reveals himself in logical arguments, which we were just talking about. But according to William Graves, if you just assert that God is nowhere and nothing, then you're right. Okay, so William, so is that your standard for what's true, William? What you believe? Is that what you believe is a good standard for how you know things that are true? Jesus failed, Satan knew. Well, if Jesus failed, then we wouldn't be sitting here. If Jesus failed, then Satan would be your daddy, and that's exactly who he is. But Satan would be all our daddies, not just yours. Right now, Satan's your daddy. If Jesus failed, he'd be all of our daddies, but thank the Lord. Thank God, thank Jesus Christ, that he didn't fail. He was actually successful. He defeated the forces of evil. He defeated Satan, and he emptied hell. For you, William, he did that for you, and yet you spit in his face. You say God is nowhere and nothing when you have no proof for that, and it's a bald assertion on your part. So welcome to the channel, brother. I hope you stick around. God knew law of mathematical education than Jesus. William, with a name like William, I would expect you to actually speak English. I don't know if you're foaming at the mouth because you're possessed by a demon, or if you are from India or something like that. But that made no sense. God knew law of mathematical education than Jesus. Makes no sense. So try to reform that sentence, William. And actually, if you'd like to talk in person, because I'm just interested about what kind of freak you are. Why don't I? Yeah, this is getting too high IQ. William, my chat is a bunch of slow boys. You're gonna have to slow down. We don't understand big word like law of mathematical education than Jesus. We don't understand big words like that in my chat. So you might have to come in person and try to slow it down. Try to tell us your perfect truth that you apparently know. William Graves, guys, he solved the problem. He knows there is no God. He's nowhere, nothing. How do you know that, William? What is your argument for that? What is your experience of nothingness and nowhereness? Let us know. Let us know. Because right now you're just coming off as a dummy. But, all right. First we'll do this.
Right, but I'm saying logic.
Oh, I guess I already started watching this. That's cool.
Mike. What's up, Mike?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up, dude?
Hey, just wondering if you got any evidence for the thing that you call God.
Wait, William Graves in the chat goes, God knew atom. Jesus doesn't understand. Sun solar is proven. What is going on, dude? William, are you on meth? Are you on heroin right now? God knew Adam. Agree. Jesus doesn't understand. Disagree. That makes no sense. Sun solar is proven. Well, I think you're fair. I think that's a fair argument. The sun solar is proven. Thank you, William Graves, you demon. What the hell are you talking about? Supernova, how biggest? Supernova, how biggest? How biggest? If God real, how biggest supernova? You sound like a psycho, bro. I want to give you some benefit of the doubt if you're just learning English for the first time, but I think even if you put this in your native language, it still wouldn't make any sense. What do you guys think about that? Would this even make sense if he was speaking in his native language? God knew Adam. Jesus doesn't understand. Supernova. How biggest? William, welcome, brother. I'm not trying to make fun of you, but you did come in making fun of God, so I actually don't feel bad at all. I think you actually probably need someone to put you in your place. You're a dummy. All right, let's continue watching this.
I think there's first and foremost philosophical evidence, sure.
Okay, what's the best you got?
I make the transcendental argument that if God doesn't exist, then reasoning, logic, ethics become impossible. And by impossible, I don't mean that people don't do them. I mean impossible in the sense that there's not a justification for doing and believing in those things.
Okay, so you're trying to say that these things are grounded in this God thing?
Yes.
Okay, why can't we just ground them in just reality itself?
I mean, the idea that reality itself has some kind of intellectual or conceptual content is, I think, vacuous. What does that even mean? What is reality itself? I mean, to say reality itself is a metaphysical claim. So we're asking for the grounding of metaphysics itself. So we need something more than just a metaphysical claim to ground metaphysics.
All right, so what you're trying to say here is that logic, do you think that logic requires a God?
I do, yeah.
Okay, why?
Because if we don't have that kind of a being to intellectually or in an epistemic sense ground it, it doesn't make sense how logic can be or function. So it's an epistemic argument that I'm making right now, and that's the best way to explain how things like universal, immaterial, conceptual, invariant entities.
Did I eat some mushrooms? Did I eat mushrooms? Am I tripping? Is everyone seeing this? Nimrod gave a very good advice. Is there a language barrier? Maybe you can write in your native language, and then we use some kind of translator. And then William Graves responds, I try, but some deaf people copies my writings. Plagiarism. So you're afraid of deaf people copying your what language do you speak? Is it Alpha Centauri? Do you speak Martian? What the hell is going on? Cheating. That does explain it all. He's from the cheating district of the Pleiades star system, learning English, but can't. Is this like a test? Are you taking like an English test right now? Some deaf people copies my writing. Where are you from, William Graves? Where? Like, I'm so curious. Where are you from? Yeah, write in your native language. I'll translate it on a stream. I'm curious. But remember that the deaf people might copy his writing. They might plagiarize him for some reason.
These like logic can be.
I think this guy's on DMT or something right now, honestly. But that's okay.
Is if there's a God that's where we ground these things in the divine mind, that makes sense for how those things can be. To say that they just are would be arbitrary.
Well, we can just ground them in human minds. We can just say that logic is descriptive of the world, and therefore we don't need a God at all.
Right, but to have a reductionist move immediately puts us in a position where there's all kinds of logical problems for trying to ground logic in the human mind. For example, my mind is not your mind. So to just say that it's in the human...
Yeah, new species has been uncovered. So, William, I'm not sure if you're aware of this. This is not a Word document for your college assignment. This is a stream on YouTube. So I'm not sure why you would even be writing an essay in my chat that could be copied. But also, you, just as a little quick English lesson, you're wrong about copy is one. Copies mean plural. So multiple people copy something. One single person copies something. So you're actually wrong about that grammatically. If you were trying to say deaf people plural, then you would say they copy my writings, not copies. So just because you add an S at the end of a word in English doesn't actually make it plural. It depends on the word. But still, that doesn't make this conversation any less confusing, to be fair. Draft assignment for, I'm assuming, college. But why do the deaf people, they go to the same college? Like they are writing the same essay? They might steal your work here? Or... Shroud of Turin is hoax or real? Well, Shroud of Turin is real, William. I'm glad. That was actually your first, like, coherent sentence. Still not perfectly grammatically correct, but obviously you're not You don't speak English, so that's fine. Shroud of Turin is real, though. The Shroud of Turin is a real artifact. I'm convinced. I mean, it's not dogmatic. You don't have to believe that. But I believe that it is, and I think there's good evidence to say that it is the real image of Christ from his real, genuine burial shroud in the year 0. I don't see why that would not be the case. Spices are good answer. Okay, he's on DMT. So, I mean, it's fun to engage with that, but I'm going to keep watching the video and kind of ignore you, William. But, keep on typing. You wouldn't want the deaf people to copy. This is my cat here. She wants to hang out. Charlie. Say hi, Charlie. Say hi to William Graves. You guys might be the same species. Okay. All right. See you, William. That was trippy as hell. I don't know what you're on, but I wish you the best of luck. And remember, a Xanax will always take you out of a bad trip. Don't ask me how I know that. All right.
Mine actually won't get us to justification.
Right, but I'm saying logic is something that human minds do, right? Human brains do.
Yeah, but
we tend to agree upon the axioms, or we tend to agree upon the conclusions.
It's actually, logic is not something that human minds do. It's something that human minds observe. That's the very point of logic. And I'm sure Jay is going to have an even better response, but like, that's an assertion that logic is something that human minds do. He's just asserting that to be the case. But if that were true, then logic wouldn't exist prior to human minds. Therefore, the law of identity wouldn't exist prior to human minds. Therefore, things could equal P and not P. Therefore, your worldview is contradictory, right? So that's how I would break it down.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter.
Based on this, because they are descriptive of the world, they're not prescriptive.
Right. But to say that because we do it and because we agree on it doesn't get you justification. So those are because those are fallacies.
Why doesn't it give us justification to just do logic?
Because the two things that you said are fallacies.
How?
To just do something doesn't provide justification for how and why that thing is.
Yep.
That's a fallacy. I mean, you're laughing, but it's a fallacy.
It's a total fallacy. So, for instance, if you ask me what's the justification for my love of skateboarding? Why do you love skateboarding? And I say, oh, because I do it. I love skateboarding because I do it. That tells you nothing about why I love skateboarding, the justification for me loving skateboarding. It tells you nothing prior or separate from just the simple fact that I do it. So that's a great response by Jay. And obviously true. I don't know how this Mike guy doesn't get this, but I think, again, the fool says in his heart, there is no God. Charlie, get down. All right, sorry.
It's just
okay.
Logic
the other one, you're just saying it just is. Okay, again, these are arbitrary conjectures. No, I'm not
saying it just is. I'm saying
you did
it's
say
just something
you did say it just
our minds do. It's the way.
That's saying that it just is.
World, right?
Okay, so but we do all kinds of things. That doesn't provide justification for how or why it is the case. Likewise, you appealed. Likewise, hold on. Hold on. Likewise, you appealed to the fact that we all you appeal to the fact that we all agree on it. That's called the mass appeal fallacy. So the two things that you argued.
I'm not saying in virtue of us agreeing and therefore it's true. What I'm saying is
that is what you said.
The logic itself is a way that we use axioms.
Okay. Using an axiom doesn't. Okay. Again, use.
Right? Therefore, you don't need God.
Doesn't matter. Use doesn't grant you justification.
Why not?
Because I could use all kinds of things, or I could say that we do all kinds of things as humans. That doesn't mean that it's justified to believe in. That's
yeah. If you use a gun to shoot somebody, an innocent person, on the street, just execute them on the street because you use a gun, and then someone asks you, "Why did you do that? What is the justification for you murdering that person?" And your justification is because I did it. I mean, there you go. It's ludicrous. It's ridiculous. It doesn't answer the question. So yeah, just saying we do it is not a justification for why we do it, where it comes from, how it came about. And in fact, you could do and use a lot of things that are false, fallacious, wrong. And you would only know that if you had no justification for them. So
it's not a good reason to believe in the thing because it's used.
Okay. So you're saying you're gonna just add God to the equation and pretend as if
No, I didn't just add God to the equation. I made a specific argument that a specific type of immaterial invariant thing, a universal concept, requires a certain type of universal being to ground it. It's a very precise
argument. How do you justify that? That is the justification
for the existence of logic.
Okay, that we could do the same thing for human minds. We can just say the justification is that human minds exist, therefore
human minds don't grant you the justification because human minds are finite, and your move is a reductionist move.
Wait, what? They're finite?
Yes. Do you disagree with that? He goes, whoa. Human minds are finite? I thought I was God. I thought I had an infinite mind. I mean, what? This Mike guy really needs to get a clue. I think he needs to get a clue. That's wild, man.
I don't know if you've heard of this, but a human mind is finite.
That we can ground logic in minds.
It doesn't get you the grounding because a human mind is finite. You can't justify because it's a universal.
Shows that because the mind is finite,
do you know? Because it's a universal. Is the human mind universal?
What does that even mean?
What does that even mean?
He doesn't even know what it means. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised, right? Because we watched that whole video, and his entire argument was an assertion, an illogical assertion that refuted itself from sentence to sentence. So, of course, he doesn't even know if his own mind is infinite or finite. I mean, how do you not know? How does that even take a second to think about? Is a human mind universal? No. Boom. Then it can't ground universal concepts, can it? Can something that's not universal ground something that is universal? Of course not. Okay, to Numenon. Jay asks how we can have access to universal principles like logic, and Mike's view doesn't have an answer. Under Jay's view, there is an infinite mind that the human mind accesses. Right, which makes sense. Like, for instance, okay, if I had a glass of water, right? I had a glass of water, and well, it's kind of like if I had a glass of water and then Mike argued water doesn't exist. And I'm like, "Oh, but we have this glass here. It probably came from somewhere, right?" Like and he goes, "No, it's an illusion. It's like a predetermined illusion. Like you created the water." I created the water? How did I do that? Aren't I made of water? Before I existed, wasn't there like tons and tons and tons of water around? And Mike just doesn't have an answer to that. That's a kind of a stupid analogy. I just made that up. But yeah, it's like looking at something and saying, this is all there is. I don't need to justify anything. That's pretty much his argument.
Yeah, so basic terms in philosophy, you don't even know what we're talking.
It's a Numenon. Under Jay's view, universals make sense because there is something that is universal. But under an empiricist view, it doesn't make sense. That's right. That's why Jay always hammers home how empiricism collapses into endless problems, whereas divine conceptualism does not. Yeah, it's true. Without a transcendent universal mind, you cannot have transcendent universal concepts. How do you have them? How do you have them if there isn't a universal mind? How do you have universal concepts? Not possible.
Oh, it's not universal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. So it doesn't provide justification, right?
But the mind is
reality is universal.
The mind,
yeah.
Sir, hold on for a second.
Let's move on to the next one. No knowledge of what we're talking about. Basic philosophy. What does that even mean, universal? You mean like Logic 101? You mean like Epistemology 101, universal claims? That thing that you don't know about?
Yeah, and he just leaves. That's so funny. Okay, just because I'm not done with Mike yet. This is the debate that he did with Jim Bob, and he actually just gets wrecked.
Right?
Why would
is
it matter?
This is a straw man because you're
Okay,
saying
we're gonna. I think we know Mike's position here, so I'm gonna try to find.
is that he wants a
Okay, well, we'll just start from the beginning, and we'll hear both of their opening arguments. I'm gonna run to the bathroom real quick, but
an overwhelming lack of evidence for the Christian God, but there are a myriad of issues and fallacies when it comes to theistic morality, dualism, free will, transcendentals, all of which are typically baked into Christian theology. And hopefully tonight we can address these issues. Now, one of the main issues is a very simple form of the evidential problem of evil. And the premise one goes, God, being all-powerful, gets everything it desires. Premise 2, God desires all people to go to heaven. And from this, we can conclude that if all people do not go to heaven, then either God failed at actualizing his desired outcome, hence is not all-powerful, or God does not desire everyone to go to heaven, hence not being all good. Pick your poison. The second issue is divine hiddenness. It seems that the entire point of God under Christianity, the entire reason why God created this world, is that he wants a relationship with his creation. But if God desires a relationship with me, why doesn't he reveal himself to me? Surely he has revealed himself to other people, as Christians claim he supposedly came down 2,000 years ago and did just that. These revelations have even convinced people of God without affecting their free will to believe. So you can't just use the free will defense there. If God is omniscient, he could clearly reveal himself to me in a way that he knows would convince me. Yet, no sign of it. Now, some may say, well, you have to be open-minded, Mike. You open your heart to be open. You're not looking hard enough. Well, I am open to there being a God, but if that's not convincing for you, surely the audience could reasonably agree that there are some people in the world who are honestly looking for God, but still have not experienced a revelation. Even though there's nothing stopping God from doing so, we're left with two options, right? Either God doesn't want a relationship with me, which poses a contradiction from its good nature, or it doesn't exist. But the issues don't stop there. Proponents for Christianity will typically ask a secular person, is morality objective? If the secular person responds back with no, the theist will typically go, aha, see, your morality is preference-based.
Yep.
I win.
100%. It's so funny when Mike actually does steelman the position. It is just true. Like, it just is obviously true. Let's see how he pushes back on this.
Because my morality is objective.
Yep.
Well, the first problem is that morality being preference-based has no hindrance on our capacity to build a meta-ethical or normative ethical framework. But more importantly, Christianity claims to have something it doesn't, objectivity. Not only have Christian ethics changed through time, as we see from the Old Covenant to the New Covenant, but definitionally, God is a subject, hence could not ground normative ethics
Category error.
in any objective way. God's morality is God's preference too. We can also
No, it's not. It's literally not his preference. It's him. God's goodness is him. It's his nature. So he doesn't choose. He doesn't choose in time like we do with preferences. A preference is something you choose given information, given lack of information, given time. All these things God is operating outside of and above. So if God sets forth a moral standard, it's not by some arbitrary choice. He's not a subject like that. He is a subject, but he's like an objective subject, right? So morality, ethics, rationality, order flows out of him like a river flowing from the top of a mountain, giving us all the things we have. He's not like some arbitrary, he's not like a human being that could change his mind or something like that, you know?
also point out contradictions within the system. God is supposedly all good, then drowns the world in a flood, including innocent babies.
And why is that bad, according to your view? According to Mike's view, morality is subjective, right? So if God is a subject and he chooses his morality and part of it includes flooding the world, why is that bad? Under Mike's paradigm, there's no reason to call that bad because subjects just choose whatever morality they want to have. So nice try. Nice little emotional trick, Mike, but not going to work.
Or when it commands genocide in 1 Samuel 15 and allows sex slavery in Exodus 21:7, SA in Numbers 31, etc., which even most Christians would disagree with and would say is wrong in any context.
Oh, even Christians will disagree with that. Yeah. There's no Christians that support minor attracted people. Plenty of atheists that can make philosophical, logical, big air quotes on logical arguments to support the existence and the sort of tolerance of, they call them maps. We call them pedophiles because it's wrong. But anyway. Okay.
How could there be such disagreement if Christian ethics is so-called perfect? The truth is, no ethical system is perfect, especially when considering all people have different views, but that's the strength of a secular system. It listens to all points and constantly strives to reach.
Yeah, and actually defines itself by the points because it's not tracked to anything objective. So Christian ethics, if you notice in culture, yes, ethical systems change. Human beings' ethical systems change, but they get better and better and better. If atheism were true, then you just take whatever the majority believes at any given time. That's what this meta-ethical thing is he's talking about. Well, he denies that we can make a normative meta-ethical system that actually takes into account the subjective view of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people at once. It's like, okay, great. So your morality is based on what the most number of people believe is right. Doesn't that obviously lead to slavery, sexism, bigotry, caste systems? I mean, so in India, it's actually cool that there's a caste system. It's totally cool because most people believe in it. That's actually good. Normatively, meta-ethically, that's good. That's what this position leads to.
Reach total moral agreement, rooted in as many facts as possible. Whereas Christian ethics is forever stuck in the time of barbarism. And finally, as the methodological naturalist, my position is that it's reasonably assumable to say that all that exists is a natural world, meaning within the realms of space, time, matter, and energy. I don't believe there's anything beyond the natural world. However, I am open to there being something beyond it, granted the evidence is sufficient enough. However, I would be happy to make the case as to why naturalism is much more likely than my opponent's theistic view. Christianity makes specific empirical claims of a 6-day creation, a global flood, Adam and Eve, which all could be successfully refuted scientifically.
Oh,
the main
yeah.
one being that the age of the Earth is verifiably 4.5 billion years old.
And what's the empirical evidence for science? What's the... If we can only take things that have empirical evidence, right, to be true. Newman says, one thing I find fascinating is how secular views of morality tend to be hedonistic or hedonic, and religious ones tend to be virtue-based. I'm not quite sure why that is. I'm sure why it is. Because religious ones actually believe in virtue. Atheist worldviews don't have a place for virtue. Because virtue, conceptually, is a objective moral good. Like seeking, to be virtuous is to seek the moral good. Atheists don't believe in the moral good. They believe you just create it. And that is the definition of hedonism. Whatever I believe is good is good. Whatever I want to do in the moment is good. Morally, ethically. So they support all sorts of things, all the way up until the point of abortion, of murdering a child. They believe that's good because it leads to bodily autonomy. I mean, that's beyond hedonism. That's sadism. That's horrific. But if we're to believe our culture, then it's actually a good thing to get an abortion because you slay queen, literally slay queen, even if it means slaying your baby. Slay queen. That's what hedonistic, atheistic worldviews lead to. You can even murder other people so long as it feels good for you. Which, by the way, most women are deeply traumatized after they have an abortion. But that's for something else. A different conversation. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Religious worldviews do value virtue because they believe in it, because it's in the system. In atheism, there is no virtue. You just have a preference between one way to live and another way to live. And that's all you got. So you have nothing normative, really, to to look at. The only normativity you can find in an atheistic worldview is what the consensus is, what the majority of people agree to. And like Jay said, that's a mass appeal fallacy, but it's also just obviously wrong. I mean, I guess that's what a fallacy is, but it's obviously wrong because most people in history have agreed with things that we all consider to be bad, but that the atheists can't call bad. Also, Mike's critiques against YEC fail as well. YEC advocates deny uniformitarianism, and thus him claiming present observations disprove it would be an external critique. I'm just not sure what YEC is, Numenon. What is YEC? Mike's YEC advocates deny uniformitarianism. What is YEC? No, I'm not quite sure on that. Let me know because I'm curious. Okay. Oh, young Earth creationist. Oh, I see. Okay, so Marx. YC advocates deny uniformitarianism, and thus him claiming present observations disprove it would be an external critique. Right. And actually, Jim Bob does a lot. He doesn't really argue for young Earth creationism, but he argues against evolution often, especially in the form, if the debate takes the form of evolution by natural selection or just evolution itself is not a scientific theory, Jim Bob will win that debate. He has successfully proven to me that evolution is not a scientific theory. Now, there's still the question, does it exist? Is it true? Does God use evolution or natural selection to sort of diversify his creatures? Those are still, those are still up for debate, but it's clear to me that evolution itself is not a scientific theory because it can't be falsified. So yeah, young Earth creationism is probably in a similar. It's probably hard to falsify creationism internally, like do an internal critique of creationism and show it to be contradictory. Because you're right, they don't believe in the uniformity of nature going back as far as we say it goes back. They believe God could create an Earth with the appearance of age, the appearance of billions of years of age, without actually having to age the Earth that way. My initial response to that is, well, why? Why would he do that? And I don't claim to know why God does things, but it seems like it's perfectly within his power and even, possible within his nature to actually just create that much time as well, instead of like this weird illusion and like trick people. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Maybe I'll become more clear about that. But you're right. Mike can't actually critique YEC internally, or at least his critiques are not internal critiques, they're external.
Via zircon crystal dating, and we have a working nebular model which accounts for Earth's formation and planetary disk. A global flood is scientifically and logistically impossible as the Bible describes it. There are salt deposits that are older than millions of years old, meaning they've never seen flooding or even significant rainfall in millions of years. The geological strata completely contradicts a global flood. And how could penguins get from the tallest mountains in Turkey to Antarctica? Did they waddle across the Arabian deserts, all of Africa, and then swim 2,000 miles to Antarctica with zero trace? And biological evolution.
Also, this whole thing, it's like, if God wanted that to be the case, then obviously, yes, they could. I mean, look, again, I'm not necessarily saying that there was a global flood. I think biblically, it can 100% be a local flood, and we have oodles of evidence for this exact local flood. So I'm not even, but like, from just because I don't like this Mike guy right now, and this is an anti-Mike Brigandy stream, I guess. That doesn't even follow that because it is extremely unlikely for a penguin to get from the top of Mount Sinai or wherever the Noah's Ark landed to Antarctica. It's God. Of course he could do it. He could just teleport them there. He could give them an airplane and teach the penguins how to fly the airplane to Antarctica if he wanted to. So that's not an internal critique either. You're just saying God not real, so penguins can't make it. Okay, but that's not what we believe. We believe God is real and he can do whatever he wants. So of course he could get penguins to Antarctica even if he started them on a mountain in the Middle East. Moving on, I think that the YEC debate is more philosophical than science-based. I think YEC has a problem in that a world with different physical laws would be unknowable to the point that Genesis could only be understood allegorically, even under the strictest literalist readings. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's clear that there were different physical laws. So I believe the Orthodox position is that the fabric of creation changed when Adam sinned. So the implication of that is that there is a different order of nature before Adam and Eve ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So yeah, I think you're right that maybe even if it is completely literalist, that things would just change. We also have no idea how many generations or years happen between Adam and Eve and the sort of lineage that comes after. Just the way that we're told of lineages, but we're not told that there's no space in between, say, Methuselah and Seth or whatever. You know, I don't remember exactly what the lineage is, but so there's a lot of ways that this can be evaluated, but yeah.
Being a proven fact demonstrates that there could not have been a first person. And you may go, oh, well, Mike, I believe in evolution as a theist still. But this raises more issues than it solves, because you have a magic being who existed for an eternity and then arbitrarily decided to make one particular ape species of humans, watching them go through 4 billion years of needless evolution, imposing mosaic laws on a random population of people when the immediate preceding generation of that group was not under mosaic law, not even seen as God's people. Animal suffering is also another major issue, as Christianity typically holds that animals have no free will nor moral agency. Yet inherent to their nature in the wild is immense amounts of suffering. Seems antithetical to loving beings' design. The fact...
So why is suffering bad? Question for Mike. What makes suffering bad?
That science works incredibly well and has enabled us to understand the origin of life, natural selection, consciousness, and the cosmos to a sufficient enough degree to render a Christian God unnecessary and even contradictory to the state of affairs of the entire observable universe.
Sure.
Is why I think atheism is exceedingly more likely over Christianity.
All right. Thanks.
So a bunch of assertions and basically nonsense and straw mans of the Christian position and misunderstandings of the Bible and the philosophical arguments is why Mike believes atheism is more likely. It's funny that he can't even say, like, even in his own worldview, he can't say Christianity is false because of how he's set up his paradigms and axioms. So he just has to say atheism is more likely. Okay, wait, so you could be wrong, Mike? Okay, fair enough.
For that opening statement, Mike. You still had a little bit of time to spare, but appreciate it very much. Jim Bob, whenever you're ready, you have 7 minutes on the clock for your opening statement. Go ahead.
All right, thanks. Okay, tonight, as you heard, atheism versus Christianity. These are combative worldviews, and because they're worldviews, from each of our positions, we're critiquing the other's position. And so if we take a look at the worldview Mike is coming from in order to critique Christianity, we need to examine that to see if it's actually coherent itself. My opponent's worldview states that all actions, thoughts, evaluations, and propositions are merely effects of the previous material causes. From this view, we're all just mechanisms producing outcomes entirely determined by the natural processes.
Look at Mike, like, smirking. Because he's winning when Jim Bob's about to absolutely rip his head off. The smirking. It's kind of uncomfortable. Like, what? I don't know.
This includes what we believe. This includes what we think is true. Includes the methodology that we swear is the methodology for gaining truth. Well, if this is granted...
That's a hilarious super chat, by the way. Mike's opening was him reciting his application essay to the master's program in r/atheism from Reddit University, minor in Fedora Studies. That's so true.
There is no real purpose of the debate tonight, because whatever my opponent says, he was determined to say it. However I respond, I was determined to respond.
Yep.
And you, the audience, you only have the illusion of carefully considering the positions in question tonight. After all, you're all just a bunch of material cogs at the effect of sounds and inputs you call arguments.
Yep.
My opponent may say, no, just because it's all determined by the laws of physics and chemistry, it doesn't mean we can't come to truth, to which I respond. You were just determined to say that. He will say, no, we can evaluate inputs, to which I will respond. Your
You were determined
evaluation
to say that.
itself is determined as
Yeah.
an output by previous inputs.
Yep.
Any tests, any methods, any verification, in any invalidation, all outputs in a universally determined machine he calls reality. Now, I hope you already see the problem here. If a worldview and all of its methodologies are mere effects of matter in motion, to ask which one is true would be equivalent to asking who has truer molecules. It would be like looking at two different engines and asking which of their exhaust plumes are the true plumes. My opponent will make knowledge impossible because his view can't account for the mind. Now, he said, I don't believe in anything until I have evidence. There's no evidence of this mind that's independent of causes that makes evaluations and comes to truth. So without a mind, there's no knowledge. There's no knowledge.
There's no evidence for the meaning of words either. There's no evidence for logic itself, according to Mike. There's no evidence. Well, actually, according to Mike, he states universally that logic does not exist prior to human minds. So that's obviously a universal truth claim made from his subjectivist worldview. Already a contradiction. But if he believes that, he has no evidence for that. So he does believe things that he has no evidence for.
Knowledge is dependent on a mind. The naturalistic worldview, the atheistic worldview cannot tell you what a mind is. The other consequence of my opponent's view is that he has no justification for claiming we ought to value truth. What if we granted Christianity was a mass delusion? From his view, because he's a naturalist, the view itself, coming to one view or the other, is just a natural consequence of the process, right? That's all. So there's no claim there's no justification from the naturalist to say we ought to value truth or come to true positions, because all positions are equal under the view that we're just machines spouting out sounds in the form of what we believe are arguments or worldviews. Any position a person comes to, they were simply determined to come to it. In fact, there is no they, there's just it's. Under my opponent's view, they or you or me, we're all it's. We're cogs in a machine at the effect of physical law. So anytime my opponent presents some incredulity, let's say toward Christianity or something like this, just remember, regarding my beliefs or his beliefs, keep in mind, according to his own view, he was determined to oppose them. And I was determined to hold them as true. This is cause. This is causal. You can't stop law, right? If a worldview or position makes knowledge impossible, then from what epistemic foundation can they even begin to critique my view or any other view?
That's true.
If we all held my opponent's view, the title of this debate could just as well be Natural Effects versus Other Natural Effects. Which one is true?
Yeah.
So why would it matter whether or not a worldview is true, including Christianity, if there are just epiphenomenal effects of matter in motion? My opponent will say...
Remember what Mike said. There is, in the other video, there is no truth. Truth doesn't exist. It's an illusion that humans created to describe ... He doesn't know what they describe. He doesn't talk about what the referent is for the truth claims we're making. Because in his worldview, truth does not exist. Truth is an illusion. It's a created concept, a material concept, by the way, a physical concept. You can't see it under a microscope, but trust him. By assertion, Mike states that concepts are physical. So he doesn't even believe in truth. So if he doesn't believe in truth, how can his position be true? How could we possibly accept his position as true if the position itself denies truth, denies knowledge? Jim Bob does an excellent job of getting us to that point.
Say he has no reason to believe in God. I would say you have no reason to believe in your own reasoning. It's just matter in motion. So the question is, did Mike come here today with his own will, with his own mind, with his own beliefs, with his own argumentation, or is he just a machine at the effect of previous dominoes falling? he has to accept the latter because that is his position. So from that position, why would you even argue the truth of another worldview? Why would truth matter? How would you even get to
Does it even exist?
discerning the truthfulness of two different positions? Put it this way. If my brain is a machine and it spouts out exactly what it's supposed to given the inputs, and his brain is a machine and it spits something else out, how could we possibly come to know which one's true if any methodology you offer is just more machines in motion doing what they lawfully do? So from this position, I could have came here as a Muslim. I could have come here as some sort of new age hippie who believes in, like, starseed people. It wouldn't actually matter if you're debating a naturalist, an atheist that holds Mike's position. Why? All of the views are equally valuable and equally useful because all they are the effects. They are the smoke coming out of a biological.
Sudden Booch, welcome, brother. Your head is turned backwards. Your eyes are made blind. That's a condemned soul by refusing God. That's how you look like to God. Expand on that, Booch. Is that a quote? Is that a passage? Is that a feeling you have? Some kind of poem you wrote? I don't really understand it. So my head is, or I don't know if you're talking about me, but like the atheist. Your head is turned backwards, your eyes are made blind. That's a condemned soul by refusing God. That's how you look like to God. Very interesting. Sudden Booch. Hopefully that means like kombucha or something. I don't think my head's backwards. I keep my eyes on God. I turn to God always. I ask him, I pray to him every day to never let him leave my mind, to always keep my sights directly on him. Now, is it true that my eyes are closed and my head is turned backwards sometimes? Absolutely. But I pray for wisdom, for a wise and discerning heart, and that's all we can do. And then God will turn our heads up. He will open our eyes, and he will help us. Fortune tellers. That's what that was 2 fortune tellers. Cool. Interesting. Well, welcome, Sudden Booch. I hope you enjoy it. In case you're unclear, I am a Christian. This is a Christian stream. Many of the chatters and viewers are atheists, and we talk about God being real. I prove to my chat that he is real, that he is the Christian God. He sent his son, Jesus Christ, who lived and died and resurrected for our salvation. And he wants us all back in his fold, in his pastures. So welcome. I hope you're here, to enjoy and to learn and to have a good time. Right now we're watching a debate between an atheist and a Christian. It's a topic that I particularly like to debate. And Jim Bob is pointing out that actually to be an atheist, or really to be anything other than a Christian, is to have a incoherent, inconsistent worldview, which contradicts itself. And it's a masterclass. This debate is in that regard, I would say. Continue.
Engine we call the body and the brain. From that view, how could you argue? How could you even debate? I mean, there's no point in even debating from the view he holds, because there's no ultimate purpose to get to something truer. And that's my time.
Where people who follow God keep their view true and they follow Jesus, it's a good thing. Yes, must follow Jesus to follow God. He and the Father are one. He is the narrow gate. He is the way, the truth, and the life. There is no other way to the Father except through Jesus Christ. So you're absolutely right, Sudden Booch, and you're amongst friends here, and we welcome you. And I appreciate your courage to state the truth of your Christian belief. So, thank you, brother. You're in good company, and you're on the right track. I would guess. I don't know you very well, but I would guess you're on the right track.
All right, thank you for that opening statement, Jim Bob. Before we get into it, I want to remind everybody one more time, if you want to send in your super chats, I will be showing them on screen as the debate goes on, but we will actually read them and address them at the end of the debate. So send in those super chats. We will get to all of them, either on YouTube or the Donut Chat link. And if you want to call in directly, you can get a stream link from the mods in the Discord, and you can call in, ask your questions directly. Gentlemen, I expect this to be a very contentious debate. I understand you both have your lines of arguments, lines of questions that you want to go down. I want to make sure you get a chance to do that. I will try to be as hands-off as I can unless there's just constant interruption or, total derailment. But try to be charitable with one another, and I will try to stay out of it as much as I can. The floor is open. We'll start with Mike. Go ahead.
Great. Yeah. So, Jim Bob, you said that I cannot know truth. I think your position is that I cannot come to truth in a deterministic world. Is that correct?
Yep.
It's worse than that. There's no I. There's just a machine. Yeah.
Right. But the point is I can't know truth without free will. Is that correct?
Yep.
That mechanisms don't produce truth. Yes.
Okay. So, when you say something's impossible, right, that implies that there's a contradiction. So what exactly is the contradiction in a determined world where there's truth that is itself determined?
You're assuming truth. There's a truth that's accessible. What is this truth you're referring to in the statement?
Yeah, good question. Truth is merely descriptive, right? It's just a language you use to describe reality, right? So again,
So what does it describe? If it's just merely descriptive and truth merely describes reality, what is real? What is the referent for the truth? What he said is that truth is not truth. Truth is descriptions of things. Okay, fine. So then there is no truth. If all you have are descriptions of things, that's not a proposition. How could it be?
What's the contradiction in a descriptive theory of truth in which
there are contradictions themselves aren't even possible under your view?
Okay, well, that's another claim you're making. I'm asking you for the contradiction, right? See, I'm doing an internal critique here, right? I'm asking you, where's the contradiction? All you've done by saying that is adding another claim to your search,
when you say contradiction, right, you're assuming that we have access to the laws of thought, right?
Right, but I'm doing an internal critique, right? I'm putting on your shoes for the sake of the argument. Where exactly
No, he's not. No, he's not. If he was doing an internal critique, then he would be taking on Jim Bob's position and not asking Jim Bob, where is the contradiction in my view, right? And Jim Bob is doing an internal critique. He's saying, under your worldview, you don't even have access to the laws of thought. The laws of thought might not even be real. Truth might not exist. I doesn't even exist. Mechanisms can't produce truth claims. And then Mike's saying, no, that's not an internal critique. That's not an internal critique. Show me the contradiction in, truth existing when truth is just a description. Well, that's the contradiction. Truth is not a description. A description is a description. Truth is a, Truth is something. Truth is something objective, right? Truth is something that exists. If it is anything at all, it exists and it's objective. A description is not something that exists. It's not like an individual object, right? A description is words you use to describe X, to describe some referent. Truth is the referent. That's the contradiction. You just made truth not real. Understandable that he's on about the word truth versus Jesus truth. Yeah, this guy, Mike, has no conception of the capital T truth at all, which is why he can't even get his head around smaller truths like the ones that Jim Bob is explaining.
Are you doing an internal critique of my internal critique?
I'm putting on your worldview for a second, right? I'm saying, okay, great, God exists, we can get logic. Now go ahead and point out the contradiction in a universe where the truth is determined.
In the universe where you don't have access to truth, it can't be determined. So it's not a contradiction because you can't even get to a contradiction because you don't have access to truth. So that's like asking, like,
no, you're not getting it. You're not understanding, right?
What's truth? Right? I asked you to define what truth is. A description of reality, right? Okay, right, I'm going to tell. Listen, stop there. I can't grant you that under your worldview. Why? Because you making a description of reality is merely an epiphenomenal effect of previous causes under your own view.
Yeah, where's the contradiction there?
That's the contradiction.
You don't have access to contradictions.
That's it. That's the contradiction. If your statements are just like epiphenomenal events of previous causes, right? Then you asking for me to give a contradiction is itself contradicted by your worldview, right? Okay, and then Sudden Boosh says, but the world does not have a forever truth like Jesus gives freely by faith. Yes. Yeah, the world does not offer anything universal, clearly. Because people that live and abide by the rules of the world alone, i.e. atheists, they can't make any claim about universals, about transcendence. They don't have those claims to make. Whereas Jesus makes many, many universal claims, and they all happen to be true. Praise God.
It's because when you make a statement, all you're doing, it's no different than like farting, passing gas, or something just happening in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you're kind of lost here. I'm asking you.
Oh, am I lost? Oh, how condescending of you, Mike. Oh, are we lost? Oh, you're kind of lost here? Yeah, no, you're the one that doesn't even know what you're saying, Mike. You don't even know what you're asking.
I'm putting on your shoes for the sake of the argument. I'm saying, hey, Jim Bob says that we cannot get to truth without God, right? Or without free will.
Yeah.
Where is this? If you're going to say it's impossible, I'm asking you for the contradiction there.
Then you're not taking on his worldview. You're asking Jim Bob to do an internal critique, what she's already done, what she's been doing. Why does he keep pretending that he's taking on Jim Bob's worldview when he's saying, what's the contradiction in a determined universe? I think he's already presented the contradiction. And then when Jim Bob answers the question, he goes, no. Sorry, you're a little bit lost here. You don't get it. I am taking on your worldview. Yeah, but Jim Bob's worldview is not that the world is in any way determined. What? Okay.
Under your framework, right? I'll even take on for the sake of the argument, your definition of truth, right? So go ahead and point out the contradiction with your logic, demonstrating that it's impossible for me to have truth. Go ahead.
Do you need to assume logic, right, and run it properly to have access to truth?
Look,
I asked you a question.
No, I asked you a question first. You don't answer.
Yeah, but your question was nonsensical. Your question could not be answered. It implied all sorts of things that you don't even have in your worldview. So how is Jim Bob going to do an internal critique of your worldview when you haven't even, we're not letting him? When he tries to do it and you say, no, Jim Bob, so condescending. He goes, Jim Bob, you're confused here. You're a little bit lost. It's like, no, actually, dude, you don't even know what the hell you're saying. You don't believe in truth. So why are you asking Jim Bob for a contradiction about your truth claim when you already said you don't believe in truth? Okay, Sudden Booch, amen to that. Praise be to Jesus. Praise be to Jesus indeed. I just realized he has the Bone Faith guy has the same worldview like some of Judas. Sure look like he have faith, but no. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Many people. I don't know what you mean by the Bone Faith guy, but the Mike guy. Yeah, Mike guy is like that. Yeah, he has faith in empiricism, I guess, which is ironic because empiricism has no evidence for it. So in order to believe that all claims that are rationally held must have empirical evidence, you have to hold the rational claim that empiricism is true based on no evidence. Ding, 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 ding. Big problem. Big self-contradiction.
Question back, right?
Okay, put it this way.
Look, Jim Bob, I'll duplicate you, right? I'll just say, I'm Jim Bob. My name is Jim Bob, right? Now go ahead and point out the contradiction that shows me that I cannot get truth in a deterministic world because you're saying it's impossible.
Because listen to me. Me, if you believed what you believe, me pointing to a contradiction would just be a determined outcome of physical action.
You're deflecting.
No, that's a descriptively true, right? Do you deny it? I want to ask you. No. I want to ask you. You have to concede to this because this is your view. When you ask me a question, when you produce the contradiction, right? You have to believe from your view that whatever I say was determined based on previous laws, right?
Yeah, I already look.
Yes or no?
Look, I'm putting on your worldview for the sake of
No, you're not. You're literally not. If you were putting on his worldview for a second, the answer would be very obvious. There is no contradiction under my worldview because truth exists, therefore, and free will exists. Therefore, we can make truth claims. We can arbitrate and decide between one thing that's true and one thing that's false. So there's not a contradiction given Jim Bob's worldview. There is a contradiction given your actual worldview. So just saying that I'm Jim Bob, I'm taking your worldview, now prove a contradiction, you're asking him to contradict his own worldview, which actually doesn't have a contradiction. Why are you making him debate himself for you? I thought this was your debate. I thought it was Mike versus Jim Bob, not Jim Bob versus Jim Bob. What? Okay. Why do I use bone? Because it's more of nothing than have the truth. Yeah, true. All right. Cool. Cool.
You're not answering the question.
Because your question.
So you're not going to answer that question. I'm actually demonstrating. Of course it does, dude. It demonstrates we have no access to knowledge.
Look. So I'll do this again for you, right?
Oh, how kind of you.
Your worldview. I am assuming your definition of truth. I'm assuming.
No, you're not.
I'm assuming
No, you're not.
everything about you.
No, you're not.
Now, I am. This is
you're
what
not.
I'm doing. I'm doing
Dude,
it right now. I'm ready.
No, you're not.
Well, if you were doing that, then you would know that there's no contradiction. Also, how could Jim Bob prove to you that his own worldview is contradictory? Like, and why would he do that? And why would you ask him to do that in a debate? Like, what if I had a debate with someone about, like, say, abortion, and then I got there, and it's like, I give an opening statement, and the, pro-choice, the pro-murdering babies person gives an opening statement, and then it's time for open discussion, and I go, now, pro-murdering babies person, given your own worldview, why are you wrong? That's what Mike is doing here. He's saying, Jim Bob, given your worldview, why are you wrong? What, so you want him to debate himself? Because you don't have any argument, and every argument you have is self-defeating? Sure.
Listen, I started with an internal critique.
Just because you're saying you're doing it doesn't mean you are.
I'm already doing this, right? I'm already putting on your worldview for the sake of the argument.
What part of what you're saying is my worldview?
Everything.
No, that doesn't say anything. What exact part are you holding right now that's my worldview?
I'm a Christian, and I think that you can't have truth without God.
No, I never said you can't have truth without God. You didn't steel man me. I didn't say you can't have truth without God.
Yeah, he said you can't have truth without free will. Now, that implies a God. There's all sorts of other things, but Mike is strawmanning Jim Bob by saying, like, it's like he didn't even listen to the argument. It's actually like he didn't even listen to the entire opening statement. Nothing in the opening statement said you can't have truth without God. The opening statement was, given atheism, truth and knowledge can't exist. What does that have to do with God? It actually is the opposite.
Oh, okay.
See,
so
now now that's. I want you all to notice that he deliberately misrepresented something I never said.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go again, Mike. If you ask me to produce a contradiction in any given worldview, not just yours, from your view, yes or no, when I respond by opening my mouth and making word sounds, is what I'm saying completely determined by previous causes, yes or no?
Yeah, and look, we can still get truth under a deterministic world. And
that's called begging the question.
No,
I asked you a simple question. Is it yes or no?
The question begging? Where is the question begging? Actually?
One question at a time. Did you say yes?
I said yes. We can get truth.
Okay, let's start that. Let's start here. You
ask. No, you're not going to deflect. Look. I asked you.
Yeah. You
deflect
can't
from what?
You know you're done.
He's done. He really can't answer. Okay, so consider the first. This literally goes on. This Mike guy, he cannot get this point for like 50 minutes. So we're going to skip ahead and see what happens at like around the hour point, see if they're talking about anything different. But they go back and forth like this for a very long time, and it's really, really annoying.
In a non sequitur. Now,
what's the rest of the straw man? You agreed that our views, all of them, are wholly determined by physical laws.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, which can be verified.
Okay.
How are they verified?
Verification would also be determined by physical laws. So
yeah, and there's nothing wrong with a deterministic world where truth is verified to be true.
Okay, so again,
truth is verified to be true. Do you see how circular this whole thing is? He used the word truth 3 times in that sentence. There's nothing wrong with a physical world where truth is verified to be true. So that truth truths truth. How dumb is this guy? Guys, this is the strongest atheist position. Guys, truth truths truth. Truth makes truth true. Come on, idiot Christians. Truth makes true true. True. Christians are so dumb. Truth truths truth. idiot.
is determined by physical laws, I'm actually being lawful right now.
No, you're not, because I can point out fallacies and influence your logic.
Yeah, but
why would
why would a fallacy
matter
make
if
it
I'm
untrue?
determined to believe?
Another straw man, right? What you're
I
saying.
asked you why. Why would a fallacy matter, dude?
Because it's a fallacy and it's incorrect logic.
If
right?
Fallacies are a fallacy because fallacies are fallacies. Fallacies matter because they are fallacies. This guy only speaks in circles. He doesn't know how to say anything other than a circular statement.
Determined to be inconsistent in logic, how could I be wrong if your entire epistemology is governed by natural laws?
Why would it be the case that you can't be wrong? That's the question of the day. Right?
That's your
Why does it
worldview.
Matter.
This is a straw man because you're saying that I can only because I'm determined that means I'm true or correct. No, that's a straw man. I never said that. I never said that because you're determined.
Then why are you true? Then why are you correct? If that's not what you're saying. What makes you correct? Given the fact that everything is determined. Your epistemology is things that are determined can be true or are true. So, if that's your epistemology, Jim Bob is also determined to believe that God exists. It's the exact same standard. You guys have if you hold the exact same standard, you can make two contradictory statements. That is called a self-refutation. That's called a self-defeating argument. If you can take the exact same standard and make two opposite claims out of it, the standard is wrong. Obviously. Okay.
That means you keep making this fallacy. So again, show me the contradiction in a universe that's determined to yield verified truth.
I'm saying from your view,
Verified truth doesn't exist in a world that's determined. That's the contradiction. There you go. Or more accurately, P and not P are true given that worldview. In the deterministic universe, both God does exist and both God and God does not exist are equally valid, veridical, true statements. Those two things is a P and not P that violates the law of identity. And it violates the laws of logic. That's the contradiction. Therefore, your worldview is false.
there is no
Yeah,
contradiction.
Bob, if you don't answer this, there's no point in debating you. This is embarrassing. for
Oh,
you.
shut up.
Oh, shut up.
Listen
you
to me.
pussy.
Give the
According to your-
contradiction. Give the
according to your-
contradiction. Give the
according to your
contradiction.
according to your view,
Give the contradiction.
Okay, you
I'm-
got
you're
you
gonna
got
let me
Mike,
talk?
you got to
You
let
gotta
him answer.
shut
You
up,
got to
man.
let him answer, Mike. You got to let him answer. Go ahead.
according to
Look at
your
that little
view,
smirk. He thinks he's winning. That's the weird thing about. That's like this demonic thing about this is Mike actually thinks he's winning the debate, so he's smirking like some Karen at a Walmart that thinks she's gonna get the fucking apples for free. That's ridiculous. Look at that little smirk. Look at his little effete hand like reaching for his empty water bottle. Cool, dude. You're really winning this argument.
if I'm determined to live out a belief that's completely
Look,
caused
takes
by
the empty
previous-
sip. That's how you know he lost. He took a sip from the empty water bottle. I'm not saying I've never done it before, but when I have done it, it's because I'm nervous. It's because I'm losing. It's because I'm this or that. The sip from the empty glass only happens when you have nowhere to go. And that's exactly what we just saw Mike do.
material matter in motion. If I was inconsistent or contradictory, it wouldn't matter because it's just the epiphenomenal effect of dominoes in a row. That's all it is.
Okay, Mike, hang on. Before you respond, because Mike, I understand you're probably not satisfied with the answer. You're asking Jim Bob to provide, P and not P on the deterministic view.
Right.
Jim Bob, essentially, if I'm understanding it right, is saying that contradictions don't matter. So he's not. He's.
They don't
he's saying, no, there isn't a contradiction because contradictions are not possible.
Yeah, contradictions that doesn't mean anything given the materialistic worldview. Nothing contradicts anything because you're determined to believe anything, right? So Mike's saying, give me P and not P, give me a contradiction. And Jim Bob's saying, no, your problem is deeper than that. The contradiction isn't even in language. It's before you even get to language. You don't even have contradictions. There are no contradictions given determinism. That's the argument. And Mike is like beaming. He's like grinning and laughing like a little girl because he thinks he's winning when Jim Bob says contradictions don't matter. Jim Bob's not saying contradictions don't matter in my worldview. He's saying contradictions don't matter in your worldview. So if you think it's stupid for someone to say contradictions don't matter, welcome to your own worldview, dummy. Welcome to your own worldview where contradictions don't matter, truth doesn't exist, knowledge doesn't exist, the laws of logic don't apply to reality before human beings come into effect. It's just insane. I mean, and then the fact that he's like, I'm winning. The fact that he thinks he's winning is just wild to me.
In a deterministic worldview. If I'm understanding it
Correct.
properly, that's his
absolutely
answer. So
absolutely correct. They're not only impossible, but even if you said somehow they were, right? It wouldn't matter. Why? Because I would just be another determined mechanism to ignore contradictions in my view. I would be determined to do it.
Then you'd still be wrong, right? Because
you would be
making the
determined to
let
think
him,
that.
Hang on, Jim Bob. Let him respond. Let Mike respond here.
Yeah, you're not addressing the question. You're not really engaging. I asked you, why is it impossible that under deterministic minds we can't come to verifiable truth? And all you're saying is, well, it's a mechanism, and mechanisms can't be true. That's
true. Wait, that's great. It's funny that he used that stupid voice for it because that is 100% true. Can a mechanism be true, Mike? Can a mechanism be true? Is a car engine? Which is more true, Mike? A car engine or a battery? What's more true, Mike? A tornado or a tsunami? What's more true, Mike? The formation of a solar system or a rock being eroded by the ocean sweeping up against it? Which one is more true? Duh, of course mechanisms aren't true. They don't produce truth claims. They don't... The only thing you could say about a mechanism is you could make a human mind, actually not just a human mind, but a rational mind could make a proposition about a mechanism, which is either true or false. But a hurricane is not more true than a tsunami. If you say hurricanes exist, that could be true. But if you just say hurricane, is that true? And under Mike's worldview, every belief, every utterance, every word you say is just like going hurricane, 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 tsunami, hurricane, 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 hurricane. That is nonsense. There is no truth given that worldview. It actually makes no sense. Okay.
I answered this already.
I'm asking you for a contradiction. All you're saying is impossible. And I'm keep asking you why, and you can never show it.
The contradiction is that a mind, you're saying, why can't a mind be determined? I'm saying you couldn't tell me what a mind was under determinism. That's the contradiction.
Question begging. That's question begging.
No, it's not.
Then tell me what a mind is.
A product of the brain.
And then to Numenon, also the verification could be determined not to give accurate results, and thus you couldn't verify whether either your verification processes give accurate results. Exactly. And it's funny that he accused us in the other video of kicking the can down the road when that's all he's doing. He's just kicking this can all the way back. I didn't mean to do that. Okay.
Oh, more like the logic, like there's a little section in the brain called the mind.
Yeah, it's called the prefrontal cortex, the limbic system.
So
that's where the mind is.
Cortex is the mind, right?
Oh, interesting.
It is what produces the mind. The mind is just the electrochemical process of the brain.
Okay.
Now, how about
if you
this?
change if you change the laws of the electrochemical in all the routing system, and it behaved exactly how you coded it to, but it resulted in untrue descriptive propositions about the world, how could it be wrong?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't verified to be true.
Oh, because it wasn't truth to be true. Because true didn't true that time. How could it be verified to be wrong? Oh, because true, 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 and true, 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 true. Therefore, Jim Bob idiot. Right. Great argument, Mike. Yeah, you gotta admire his confidence. It actually irks me. I don't know how much more I can handle of this faux confidence, this like fake condescension, thinking you're right so egregiously and being so wrong.
by, let's say, other minds. Let's say all the other minds.
Or there's a
No,
fallacy
hold on,
there.
hold
There's
on.
a fallacy.
No,
or
no, it's a
inconsistency.
logical possibility. You're not listening to the
You're-
logical hypothetical.
I know it's a
You don't want to.
possibility.
You don't want to.
I know it's a possibility. Of course, I never said it. You're making
What
a
is?
straw man here.
What's the logical
You're saying that what if the
possibility?
calculator malfunctions? Would it be wrong? Yeah, no shit. And if a mind malfunctioned, we'd be wrong too. We'd be
So,
fallacious.
okay, so here's
Wrong
my
based on what?
Logic is to do comparative analysis and verification.
Here's my question.
Now, you
hypothetically.
have yet to show the contradiction.
I'll
Can
show you a
do
problem.
that?
Yeah,
He
I'll show you
showed
a
it
problem
like
right now.
50 times.
Contradiction in a deterministic universe.
The contradiction is that you don't have any truth claims. That's the contradiction. You're saying the universe is deterministic is a truth claim. If the universe is deterministic, there are no truth claims. That's the contradiction, Mike. It's pretty obvious, and I'm pretty sure Jim Bob said it like 50 times. I can't believe it's still an hour in and he's not getting this. The universe is deterministic is a truth claim. If determinism is true, there are no truth claims. Therefore, determinism is not true. It contradicts itself. I mean, it's crazy.
The contradiction is this. If you're saying the mind gives us access, whether it's determined or not.
Look, he's not even listening. Look how quickly he gave up on listening. He said, what's the contradiction? And Jim Bob goes, okay, I'll give you the contradiction. Given your worldview, if you're saying the mind is this, and then that's all he said. He's just setting up the contradiction, showing why it doesn't work, why it is fallacious. And then Mike goes, oh my God. He's not answering my question. Because he is answering my question. This guy refuses to answer my question because all he does is answer my question. What a loser, dude. What an idiot. We gotta fast forward. This is crazy. Let's go to the 2-hour mark and see if anything's happening. It looks like maybe they have like guests or something. Come on.
Received the Steelmans from each side. Appreciate it very much. Next caller, we got Fresh Pelmani. Welcome, Fresh Pelmani. Go ahead.
Howdy,
whenever you're
everyone.
ready.
I'm sitting outside in the wind again, so I can't see shit, but I'll see if I can at least understand what's going on. Mike, so would you accept the proposition that the universe has ontology?
Yeah.
Okay. Did this ontology exist prior to there being any minds to evidence it?
Great question.
As far as I can see, yes, most likely.
Oh, so your entire position is mute. Is moot. Oh, so your entire position is wrong. You actually concede something which is the fundamental basis of your entire argument. Great job, Mike. Very big brain. Not slow boy at all.
Okay. Does ontology necessarily suggest structure?
Yes.
No.
What?
Okay,
You can have,
so
chaos.
if
You
it
can have
doesn't-
chaos. You can have chaos.
You can have. Okay, so would you say, in your view, the universe is chaotic?
Yeah, for the most part, is the universe is chaotic,
Oh.
and there could be pockets of order, which we call Earth. But
You mean like everything we observe? Like solar systems and planets and galaxies and the universe itself, and the fact that gravity is consistent and the speed of light is consistent and all the laws of the universe work and they continue to work. That's chaos. That's chaos to you, Mike. Oh, but there's pockets of order. Oh, but the pocket is the entire universe. But it's just a pocket because I know what's outside of the universe, and that's all chaotic. I mean, come on, dude.
in totality, the universe is chaotic and getting more chaotic.
Oh, sure, yeah. Oh,
Like,
sure.
If
sure.
the universe is at all chaotic, how can? Well, okay. Let me step to the next question then. Is the universe's ontology at all knowable?
Yeah, we try to using our senses and empiricism and logic. Yes.
No, I'm not asking if we try to. I'm asking whether it is.
That's the question of the universe. I don't know.
So his answer is
I don't
no,
have
it's
epistemic
not
access
knowable.
to absolutes.
Okay,
All I
so
can
you,
say is
so you have a method which is trying to understand the nature of the universe.
Right,
When you
yeah.
don't actually know whether or not the universe itself can be understood, and then you
Mhm.
go ahead and you say, Jim Bob's wrong, even
No.
though I can't know what's actually
Yep,
true
yep,
and false on
yep.
the basis of the fact that reality or truth
Love this
is
guy.
the proposition of being able to map onto reality, but I don't actually know that I can know reality.
No, that's actually false. That's
Oh,
wrong.
yeah,
I never
yeah.
said that we can't know the ontology of the
No,
You
universe.
did.
that's
I
the
did.
logical. That is the implication of your system. You said that the
I,
universe is an
I
ontology,
so
which is probably
listen.
chaotic, but I don't
I
know what the
said.
ontology is. And then you said that the way that
Hold
we know
on,
what is
hold on,
true,
hold on,
true being
hold on.
maps onto reality. And then you're saying that I can basically say what's true or false based on knowing what reality is when you don't know that you know what reality is.
I don't need to know the absolute ontology of the universe to describe it.
Yes, you do, dummy. Otherwise, your description is meaningless. Otherwise, your description is literally just a fart out of your mouth. The issue with this debate, as I see, is that these concepts show vague, chaos, order, verification, and so on would need to be unpacked. It seems like they just have different definitions. I'm not sure if I agree with that, Nubanon. I think Mike is being pretty clear with what his definitions are, but I think all his definitions contradict each other. So like he talks about truth, but he doesn't believe in truth in the next sentence, or he talks about chaos, but actually the universe is ordered in the next sentence. Verification, etc., etc. Like, I think even using all of Mike's own definitions, it's pretty obvious that his worldview just like implodes with inconsistencies and incoherencies. And this line of questioning by Fresh Pelmani, this guy's awesome. That was great. That was simple and right to the point, and exposes that exact problem. Even if you forget the chaos order stuff or whatever, the problem is Mike has no idea whether or not the universe is even knowable, whether there's any sort of universal truth claim that can be made about the universe. And yet, his argument is that is a universal truth claim, that atheism is true. That's something that if it's true, it's universally true. So he doesn't know if he can make universal truth claims, and yet he's making one. And when you ask him what the foundation for that claim is, he says, well, we actually have no foundation for any claims. In fact, all claims are determined. So I'm actually determined to make this universal truth claim that I don't believe or I don't know if there are universal truth claims, forgetting the fact that he's sneaking in knowledge to his own view, which he is granting himself. He can't, I don't see how he could justify knowledge under determinism, but yeah, it's just crazy.
Why do I need to know absolutes?
You can't describe something.
Hang on, Fresh, Fresh, hold on, let Mike respond here. Go ahead.
Why do I need to know absolutes about the universe to have truth?
Do you know any of the universe's ontology at all?
We try to through physics.
But do you?
We attempt to. That's the point.
But do they actually ever reach the mark of knowing the universe's ontology?
We are subjects. We are not parts. We are not objective absolute things, right? We are just subjects in an absolute.
So you're not going to answer the question, or I mean, that's a non sequitur. He goes, do we make any claims about the universe, truth claims that track to the being of the universe itself, that are ontologically valid, or even that we have a reason to believe? And then he said, well, we're subjects, we're not objects. It's like, okay, what does that have to do with the question?
I'm not asking about whether or not. I'm not asking about where our position and state is. I'm asking whether or not in our position.
Yeah, we
and state,
can't
we're
know.
able to
Look. We don't have epistemic access to empirical absolutes. I don't know the absolute ontology, but all I'm trying to do as
then how do you say what is true and false?
Hold on, by describing it, by describing reality through logic
Describing
and
what?
empiricism and observation.
But the descriptions could be either true or false or neither or both, according to Mike. So what are you saying when you describe these things? Are you essentially, the question is, are you just farting, or are you actually describing something that tracks to reality? And Mike's saying, well, I don't actually know. I actually really don't know. Like, yeah, you're a great debater, dude. You're a real genius mind. I like how Mike posted this, too, on his own channel. Nice. This is great. Okay, so Jim Bob does give the syllogism, or at least the direct P, not P, in the comment. Legend has it, Jim Bob, like snarky fucking comment. Legend has it, Jim Bob still hasn't provided the contradiction after claiming truth existing on a deterministic worldview is impossible. Here, well, actually, he's commenting, and he did say it thousands of times, just no one was listening. The contradiction is as follows. Matter isn't rational. Matter is rational. Right? There it is. Simple as that. Matter is not rational, and if all we are is matter, and we are rational, then matter is rational, given this worldview. So, contradiction. Contradiction. Because Mike's view is that matter is all there is, and humans are purely matter. Therefore, Mike is not a rational being. He's not a rational agent, because he's matter. Therefore, his views are illogical and irrational, which they are, unsurprisingly. But let's see how. That's not a logical contradiction. Oh, it's not. It's not P and not. It literally is a logical contradiction. Matter is rational. Matter does not equal rational. If matter is P, here's P. P is both P and not P. Sorry. You're done. Yeah, and he just was not. It's funny. We even get a lot of Jim Bob W's. This is Mike's channel, to be fair. So most of the comments should, and you would expect to be like, wow, Jim Bob idiot, atheist good, Christian bad. But even on Mike's own channel, half of the comments are in support of Jim Bob.
Okay, so, yeah, okay, but then that just basically falls into Jim Bob's trap, because at that point you can have any subset of logic which acts as a functional description of the universe, which might even be pragmatic, but is ultimately has
there's
no
multiple
mapping
logic.
onto the nature
There's
of the universe
multiple
it is.
ways to describe.
And so
There are
as
multiple.
such, this whole statement of what's true and what's false is pointless. It's
Yeah.
just at this stage, there's nothing that can be said at all.
Why is it pointless?
Because you said it was. You decided it was.
When we can come to truth.
It's pointless because it never actually. It's pointless because you have the goal explicitly set by saying truth is that which maps onto reality, and you say you cannot know what the nature of reality is.
Yeah, that's why we.
Therefore, there is no truth. If truth is that which maps onto reality, reality can't be known, truth can't be known. Boom. There you go. There's the syllogism. Or whatever. There's your contradiction, Mike. How are you going to squirm out of this one?
It's science. So listen, science is an approximation of what we think the
Oh.
universe is.
Oh, science.
Science is not absolute.
Oh, it
scientist
isn't.
or
Okay.
physicist
How does that address the contradiction?
ever says that we have epistemic access to absolute empirics.
Did he ever say
It's
that?
nonsense. We try our best to map reality. Whatever the ontology.
But you can't map reality given your worldview. Therefore, science doesn't even work given your worldview. Science isn't even right given your worldview. Science actually has no mapping onto reality because it's unknowable. Ridiculous.
It is unknown to us,
How
and that they
can you
always
map
will.
reality when you've conceded that reality is unmappable?
Yeah.
You're saying
Great
that
question.
reality is unmappable
No,
by
I did
saying that
not. Reality
You
is
did.
mappable.
You did
Reality
say
is
it's
mappable
unmappable.
through science, logic, and empiricism.
But
All right,
you've
one
just
last
conceded that
rejoinder
process
here.
will never
One last one.
actually-
You're
you
just
conceded
gibberish.
already
You're
that
just
that
gibbering
process
right now.
will
You're just
never actually
yapping,
be
right?
able to get
You're just
Okay, hang on,
yapping
hang on,
over
hang
it.
on, hang on.
basically
Hold on,
just
both of
throwing
you.
shit at the
Both of you.
wall.
Hold on, fresh. Hold on. One last rejoinder, make it your final point, and then we got to move on.
I think my point's pretty self-evident at that stage. It's basically, it is, what you are suggesting, despite realizing it, is fundamentally relativism and skepticism, because nothing can be known other than from well, it's not even known, because it's just an attempt to throw shit
There
at
are
the wall to
different
say that this is
degrees
what
of
reality
knowledge.
is, even though you
Look,
don't know
look.
what reality is.
Yeah. Okay, I'm about done with this. And I'm about done with the stream, too, because we had a good time, man. We had a great time. Went for a few hours. A nice, chill, mellow, getting back into it. I miss Infamous, but I'm also glad I had a stream without, the barrage of sophistry. No, I'm kidding. But we'll be back on Wednesday. We'll be streaming more consistently. I'm going to post clips and videos and all sorts of stuff coming up every day. Every day I'm going to post something. Every day. I always make big claims, and then we'll see if that happens. But I appreciate you guys coming back, joining me again, enjoying the stream and chatting and engaging. You guys are the best. You're the reason I'm here at all. Glory be to God. Glory be to Christ. Thank you all. And I'll see you